As I walked to the entrance, I saw my husband standing there with a woman I didn't recognize. She was young and beautiful. When I asked who she was, my husband smiled and said, "This is my new wife. From now on, we'll live together in this house." "What are you talking about? I don't understand," I replied, shocked. "That's why I'm telling you. I'm divorcing you. I've become the president and taken over this house," he said. "What do you mean?" "Just leave quickly. We don't need you anymore, Auntie," he added. With those harsh words, my husband and his new wife kicked me out of the house. My name is Sandy, and I'm a 30-year-old office worker. I work at a company owned by my father and help him both at work and in his personal life. Ever since my mother passed away, it's just been the two of us. To support my father, I started cooking and cleaning in middle school and also made his lunches. My father appreciated my efforts and helped me with my studies. Thanks to him, I got into a good high school and later went on to university. After graduating, I decided to work at my father's company to repay him. The workplace was full of kind people, and I felt satisfied when we all worked together to achieve great results. I was happy working there. One day, I met a man named Joey, who had just joined the company. He was 2 years older than me, and I was immediately drawn to his warm personality and way of speaking. He was enthusiastic about his work and quickly became friends with our colleagues. I thought he was a great person. At first, we were just colleagues, but after a year-end party, we started talking more personally, and soon we began going out to eat together. Although I was hesitant about romance at first, I found myself wanting to spend more time with him. I even started suggesting dates. We grew closer, and one day he confessed his feelings to me. We started dating. After we began dating, I became even more motivated at work. I was serious during work hours, but I also enjoyed spending time with him during lunch breaks and after work. He knew many fun places to go on dates and took me to restaurants I hadn't tried before, even though I'd worked in that town for a long time. Our relationship went well, and about a year after we started dating, we began talking about marriage. We even told my father about our plans. Joey nervously told my father, "I'm going out with Sandy, and we're considering marriage." I also shared our intentions, and my father was overjoyed. He gave us his blessing with a big smile. Feeling relieved with my father's approval, our relationship continued smoothly. About a year and a half after we started dating, Joey proposed to me. He handed me a ring and said, "Let's get married soon and reassure your father." I happily accepted his proposal and immediately told my father. My father was thrilled and exclaimed, "Oh, you're finally getting married." Afterward, we visited Joey's family home and I met his mother. I learned that Joey also grew up in a single-parent family. His mother had divorced his father when Joey was young because his father had an affair. After the divorce, Joey's mother returned to her parents' home and began studying for a national exam. After 2 years of hard work, she passed the bar exam and became a lawyer. She had once given up on her dream of becoming a lawyer, but after her husband's betrayal, she decided to surpass him and succeeded. Joey's mother was strict, and he warned me. My mother often scolded me, and honestly, it was tough. She might be strict with you too. Feeling nervous, I replied, "Okay, I understand." But I also admired Joey's mother for her accomplishments. Then, the day came when I met his mother for the first time. "Nice to meet you," I said. "I'm Sandy." When I greeted Joey's mother, I had a serious expression. She responded politely, "Nice to meet you, I'm Joey's mother." But I could feel the tension. "Please come in," she said, and I entered the house, realizing she was just as strict as Joey had described. During the marriage introduction, she asked me many questions and it felt like an interview. But in the end, she approved of our marriage. After that, Joey and I had our wedding and started our new life together. We enjoyed commuting and coming home together since we worked at the same company. People at work called us the ideal couple, which was a bit embarrassing but made me happy. On weekends, we went on drives or traveled together, creating many fun memories. Every day, I was truly glad I married him. However, there was one thing that concerned me, my mother-in-law. We regularly visited Joey's mother because she lived alone, and we felt it was important to check on her. But each time we visited, she would say harsh things to me. "Sandy, you need to believe in yourself more. You should be able to say no to things you don't like. If you can't handle difficult situations, you won't be able to cope when you're in trouble." "Yes, I understand," I would reply. Do you really understand what I'm saying? She would ask again. Yes, I do, I would say, trying to sound firm. Every visit to Joey's mother made me tense. Even when I was thinking about whether to focus on my family or continue working, she had strong opinions. Why would you quit your job after graduating from university? You can quit anytime, but you shouldn't quit lightly. You can manage household chores with some creativity, so don't quit your job. Hearing her say this made it hard for me to decide to quit. In fact, I was scared to tell her if I quit my job. I couldn't even imagine how much she would scold me. So I tried to balance work and household chores in my own way. Even though Joey would eventually take over the family business and I could have chosen to be a housewife, I decided to keep working, following her advice. It was very hard to stand up to Joey's mother. Even when I helped with household chores at her house, she often had harsh words for me. You need to assert yourself more. Standing your ground is important because the only person who can protect you is yourself. Her words often hurt me deeply, but Joey always comforted me. My mother is just as strict with herself as she is with others. That's why she has few friends. Don't take her words too much to heart, he would say, and his words brought me relief. After that, we started to visit Joey's mother less often. But another concern came up, my father's health. Every time I saw him, he looked tired. Are you okay? Do you feel unwell? I would ask, and although he would respond, no, I'm fine, it was clear he wasn't in good health. One day while at work, my father suddenly collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, his life wasn't in danger, but he was very weak, and the doctors advised us to live with him if possible, to monitor his condition. When I discussed this with Joey, he immediately agreed. We should live with your father and keep an eye on him since I'm worried about his health, Joey said. Thank you, Joey, I replied. At first, my father hesitated to live together, but after I strongly insisted that we should prioritize his health, he agreed. We moved into my childhood home to start our life together. Living together went smoothly, and Joey and my father built a good relationship. I felt comforted being able to live close to my father as he grew older. He became less active than before, and it was inevitable that he wouldn't always stay energetic. With age, there was a constant concern about sudden illness or a decline in his health. Then one day, something slightly worrying happened when I returned home from shopping. One day, I found Joey on the phone in our bedroom. He was saying, yeah, everything will be in our hands soon. Don't worry, everything is going according to plan. I was curious about what he was talking about, but I decided not to eavesdrop. I went to the kitchen to put away the groceries. After Joey finished his call, he came to me. Are you back already? He asked. Yes, I just got home. I didn't want to interrupt since you were on the phone, I replied. Did you hear that? Joey asked, looking a bit concerned. No, I definitely didn't listen, I said. Okay, he said, but he looked troubled. This made me feel anxious. Since we work at the same place, I doubted it was a work call. It might have been his mother, but he doesn't get along well with her, so that seemed unlikely. I couldn't help but wonder who he was talking to and what it was about. However, around that time my father's health got worse, and I had to focus on him. He couldn't walk anymore and needed care. Considering your father's condition, you should quit your job to take care of him. I'll be taking over the company, so you don't need to work anymore, Joey suggested. I started to agree, but then I remember his mother's advice to keep working and stand strong on my own. Her words felt important now. No, let's hire a daytime helper, I decided. Joey looked surprised. I think the company would be unstable if my father were gone, even with you as the president. I want to support everyone at the company and also support you, I explained. I see, Joey said, though he looked a bit disappointed. Despite his concern, I felt that quitting my job wasn't the right choice, so I stuck to my decision. After that, my days were busy with work, household chores, and taking care of my father. At night, my father seemed sorry for being a burden, but I didn't mind taking care of him. Meanwhile, Joey was also busy with taking over the company, making our lives even more hectic. Then we received some joyful news. I was pregnant. My father was extremely happy and eagerly awaited the birth of his grandchild. I was also overjoyed knowing that I could show my father his grandchild's face. However, when I told Joey about the pregnancy, his expression clouded for a moment. You're pregnant? He asked. Yes, it's our child. Aren't you happy? I responded. Of course I'm happy. It was just unexpected and surprising, that's all, he said. Well, you're going to be a dad now, so you've got to do your best, I said, trying to encourage him. Yeah, he replied, but he seemed reluctant, which worried me. After a safe delivery, my father met his grandchild for the first time and wept with joy. When we visited Joey's mother, who was usually quite strict, she also smiled gently when she saw her grandchild. She lifted the baby up and said, "She's truly adorable, Sandy. You did well giving birth while also managing work, household chores, and caregiving. That must have been incredibly hard." Her praise made me feel surprisingly pleased. Maybe Joey's mother wasn't just strict after all. Many people celebrated the birth of our child, which was very heartwarming. I planned to focus on parenting with Joey's help. However, shortly after, my father's health rapidly declined. Despite receiving treatment in the hospital, he passed away a week later. Dad, why? I grieved. It was then revealed that my father had been diagnosed with cancer 6 months ago and had been told his time was limited. But he had kept this from me because he didn't want to worry me. With a child on the way, he was determined to live long enough to see his grandchild, a testament to his strong will. Learning about my father's feelings, I couldn't hold back my tears. The funeral was held, and many people attended, showing how much my father was loved. I managed to perform my duties as the chief mourner without shedding tears, keeping my composure throughout the ceremony. After the funeral, we sorted through his belongings. During this time, Joey naturally took over as president of the company. For about a month, everything was peaceful. However, after that, something unbelievable happened. That day, there was unexpected bad weather with a torrential downpour. Joey said he was going out to shop, but I felt uneasy. While I was feeding the baby, Joey returned. I went to greet him at the entrance, relieved to see him back. "Welcome back," I said. "I'm home," Joey replied. Then I noticed an unfamiliar woman standing with him. She was quite young and beautiful. "Who is this woman?" I asked as I approached the entrance. Joey smiled and said, "This is my new wife. From now on, we will live together in this house." "What are you talking about? What is this all of a sudden?" "I don't understand," I said, shocked. "That's why I'm telling you. I'm divorcing you. I've become the president and have taken over this house." "What do you mean?" "Just leave quickly. We don't need you anymore, Auntie," Joey said harshly, and his mistress smirked. I was forced out of the house with my baby in my arms, into the pouring rain. Desperate, I knocked on the door and pressed the intercom, but neither Joey nor the woman he was with responded. With nowhere to go, I remembered a small tunnel-shaped play structure in a nearby park. I ran there to shelter from the rain. Both the baby and I were soaked, and I knew I had to find warmth and help quickly. Even though I felt hopeless, I decided to call my mother-in-law. Despite our differences, I believed she would help for the sake of her grandchild. I explained the situation over the phone, and to my relief, she came to pick us up immediately. "Sandy," she called out when she saw me. "Mother," I replied. "Quick, get in the car," she urged, driving us to her home. She took both the baby and me inside. "Please take care of this child," I pleaded. My mother-in-law frowned slightly but responded, "What are you talking about? You come in too." "Is it really okay for me to?" I asked, surprised. "Of course you are family too," she said. Her kind words nearly brought me to tears. "I'm truly sorry for Joey's irresponsible behavior," she continued. "I've always seen some of his father's traits in him, but I thought you would keep him in line. Yet he still caused trouble." Her understanding and support in that moment not only offered me shelter, but also renewed my hope and faith in family. "Am I really wonderful?" I asked, taken aback by her praise. "Of course you are. You've managed the household chores, caregiving, parenting, and work all by yourself. I respect you for that. That's why I can't forgive my son for betraying someone like you," she said. Her words moved me to tears. She had been observing all my efforts all along. "Don't cry. Be strong. You're a mother," she advised, gently patting my head and making me some warm coffee. After I calmed down, my mother-in-law spoke with determination. "Now it's time to fight back. We'll correct this wrongdoing." She offered her support as a lawyer and prepared to stand by my side. I couldn't have wished for stronger support, and together, we crafted a plan to confront Joey and his mistress. When we arrived at the house, Joey greeted us dismissively. "What are you doing here?" But when he saw his mother behind me, his expression changed to shock. "Why is Mom here?" "Joey, today I am not here as your mother but as a lawyer. We have a lot to discuss, so let us in. If you refuse, we will meet in court," she stated firmly. Joey reluctantly let us in. The mistress looked shocked to see my mother-in-law and was even more astounded when she learned that she was a lawyer. "Let's start the discussion," my mother-in-law said. "You said you've inherited the house, but where are the documents? Sandy was supposed to inherit it." "I've properly prepared the documents and completed the procedures, so there's no issue," Joey replied. "That's not correct. Sandy says she doesn't remember signing any such documents. Ownership transfer documents require the actual person's signature," my mother-in-law countered. Caught off guard, Joey stumbled over his words. It became clear that the documents had been forged. "Document forgery is a legally punishable act. Do you understand what you've done? Ignorance won't save you," my mother-in-law continued. Joey started to sweat, and his panic became evident. The mistress also looked anxious. "Sandy signed it. She was just upset and forgot." Joey tried to defend himself. "No, I did not sign anything. A handwriting analysis will prove it. You forged the documents," I calmly replied. "Joey, stop this nonsense," my mother-in-law scolded, causing him to stagger. "Sorry, I had her forge it," he confessed. "This makes the evidence complete," my mother-in-law stated, indicating a voice recorder. Joey turned pale and fell silent. The mistress was also visibly shaken. "As Sandy's attorney, I demand that you divide the property and leave this house immediately," my mother-in-law declared. "Why are you supporting her, Mom?" Joey pleaded. "Sandy is a respectable person. Once she married you, she became part of my family, making her important to me too," my mother-in-law responded. "But I am your real son," he protested. "You have betrayed this family. From now on, I am severing ties with you. Don't show your face to us ever again," she said. Disheartened, Joey hung his head in shame. The mistress seemed petrified. After this confrontation, Joey and I divorced, and I was able to recover my father's estate. Joey lost his position at the company and was eventually forced to resign. He left the company almost as if he were fleeing. Afterward, I took over my father's company and became its president. My mother-in-law helped take care of the baby during the day. I never expected that someone I once found difficult would become such a significant support. I am truly grateful for her assistance. As for Joey, after leaving the company, he failed to secure a large house, and the mistress abandoned him. Now, he's burdened with debt and child support payments, struggling to make ends meet through part-time jobs. As president, I am working hard to protect the livelihoods of our employees and care for my child. This challenging journey has reaffirmed the value of family and resilience, guiding me to lead both my family and the company toward a stable future.
The moment George sneered those venomous words, "Then never come back, sign the divorce papers and leave," I knew my life was about to change forever. I stood in the opulent living room of the house we shared, a place that never truly felt like home. The walls, once symbols of security, now seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with memories of a marriage that had been nothing but a charade. Reflecting on the years spent with George, I realized how he had skillfully donned a mask of perfection in public, while in private, he was a tyrant. The duality of his character was so profound that it left me questioning my own sanity. George, the charming and successful trader, admired by all, was a facade. The real George was a man who relished in belittling me, his wife, behind closed doors. Our relationship hadn't always been this way. In college, George was the epitome of kindness, his patience seemingly boundless. He wooed me with his gentle demeanor, and before I knew it, I was entranced, agreeing to marry him. It was only after the vows were exchanged that his true nature surfaced, like a predator revealing itself. I became his prey, trapped in a web of emotional abuse and manipulation. Each day was a battle, a struggle to appease a man who seemed impossible to please. His words were like daggers, each one striking deeper than the last. "Hey, what's with that bland food?" he would bark. My apologies and attempts at explanation were met with scorn. "No excuses," he'd snap back. My spirit withered under his constant criticism. I longed to reach out, to share my pain with friends, but George, ever the controller, severed those ties too. He convinced them I was the problem, turning my cries for help into whispers lost in the wind. I once dared to ask George to let me visit my mother's grave. His response was a cold, heartless refusal, stripping away the last shred of humanity I thought he possessed. "Why would you show your face to someone who's already gone?" he scoffed, his eyes not leaving the financial newspaper he was reading. The realization that I was nothing more than an object to him was my breaking point. I demanded a divorce, a plea I thought he would dismiss. Instead, he flung the divorce papers at me with a malicious glee. "Sign these and leave," he commanded. In that moment, I felt a surge of freedom. I signed the papers without a second thought, severing the chains that bound me to George. The divorce was finalized with a swift brutality that mirrored our entire relationship. Leaving the house that had been my prison, I embarked on a journey back to my mother's home, the only place I hoped to find some solace. Little did I know that this decision would lead me to a reunion that would change my life even more dramatically. The dilapidated state of my mother's house was a stark contrast to the life of luxury I had just left. Standing before it, memories of a happier time flooded back. But the nostalgia was interrupted by a sudden thud behind me. Turning around, I saw an elderly man in a gray suit, a face from the past yet unfamiliar. "Are you alive?" he exclaimed, rushing towards me with an urgency that left me baffled. Before I could react, he embraced me, his tears soaking my shoulder. "I heard the news of your death. I couldn't sit still. I finally found you," he sobbed, his voice laden with a lifetime of regret and longing. His embrace, though unexpected, carried the warmth and familiarity of a long-lost connection. "Could it be, Dad?" I whispered, a mixture of hope and disbelief in my voice. He pulled back, his tear-streaked face searching mine for recognition. "Elizabeth? Are you Elizabeth?" he asked, his voice trembling. In that embrace, I felt the echoes of my childhood, the faint memories of a father's love that had been absent for so long. His name was Matthew, my father, who had vanished from my life when I was just a child. As we reconnected, the pieces of my past began to fall into place. Matthew's story unfolded, revealing a man torn away from his family by circumstances beyond his control. He spoke of a love for my mother that never waned, a love that was cut short by forces that pulled him away, leaving a void in both our lives. Sitting in the dusty living room of my childhood home, I shared with him the agonizing years I spent with George. My father listened, his expression a mix of sorrow and simmering anger. "I should have been there for you," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. As I recounted the cruelty and manipulation I endured, Matthew's demeanor shifted from sorrow to resolve. "We can't let him get away with this," he declared, his eyes now reflecting a determination that mirrored my own. It was then that we decided to take action, to seek justice and retribution for the years of suffering I endured at the hands of George. Our plan was simple yet bold. We would gather evidence of George's abuse, both physical and emotional, and expose him for the monster he was. Matthew, with his newfound resolve, was ready to stand by my side, to fight the battle that we both knew was long overdue. As the sun set on my first day back in my childhood home, I felt a sense of purpose that had been missing for far too long. With my father by my side, I was ready to face my past and reclaim my future. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. George would no longer control my life. It was time for retribution, and I was ready to fight. The morning sun cast a new light on the old house, bringing with it a sense of hope and determination. As Matthew and I sat at the kitchen table, laden with years of dust and memories, we began to devise our plan of action. Matthew was not just a forgotten father trying to make amends. He had resources and connections that could prove invaluable. "Elizabeth, we need evidence. Solid, indisputable evidence of George's abuse," Matthew said, his voice firm, yet tinged with a father's concern. I nodded, feeling a surge of empowerment. For years, I had documented George's abuse in secret, a diary of my pain hidden in the depths of my personal belongings. Now it was time to bring it into the light. As I shared my diary entries with Matthew, his face darkened with each word. The extent of my suffering, laid bare in those pages, fueled a fire within him. "We'll need more than this," he stated resolutely. "Do you have anything else? Any recordings or messages?" "Yes," I replied, a sense of relief washing over me. I had recorded some of George's tirades, his venomous words captured in the secrecy of my pocket. It was a risky move, but one driven by a desperate need for validation, for proof that I was not the one at fault. Matthew listened to the recordings, his expression a mix of pain and anger. "This is good, Elizabeth. This is what we need to bring him down," he said, his voice steady but his eyes betraying a storm of emotions. Our conversation turned to George's professional life, a facade of success and respectability. "He's involved in some shady dealings at his company," I revealed. "I've overheard conversations, seen documents. He's embezzling funds." Matthew's eyes narrowed. "We can use this. It's time George faces the consequences of his actions, both personal and professional." The resolve in his voice was unwavering, a stark contrast to the man who had once left us behind. The next step in our plan required reaching out to an unexpected ally, my ex-father-in-law, Mr. Patterson. I hesitated, the thought of involving George's parents in our plan weighing heavily on me. They had always been kind, and I feared dragging them into this sordid affair. "Elizabeth, we need all the help we can get," Matthew urged. "If they know the truth, they might support us." Gathering my courage, I called Mr. Patterson, inviting him over under the guise of catching up. When he arrived, the surprise on his face was evident. "Elizabeth, it's been so long. You look different," he said, a hint of concern in his voice. "Mr. Patterson, there's something you need to know about George," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I recounted the years of abuse, the emotional scars that still lingered. Mr. Patterson listened, his expression shifting from shock to anger. "I had no idea. How could George do this?" he exclaimed, his voice shaking with emotion. "And the embezzlement. This is unacceptable. We need to act." With Mr. Patterson on our side, our plan gained momentum. We pooled our resources, gathering more evidence against George. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, painting a picture of a man who had deceived everyone around him. As we sat together, plotting our next move, I felt a sense of camaraderie, a bond formed through shared adversity. Together we were stronger, united in our quest for justice. The stage was set for a confrontation that would bring George's reign of terror to an end. The time for retribution was at hand, and we were ready to strike. The day of reckoning arrived. We had arranged to meet George at a neutral location, a quiet cafe where there would be witnesses to prevent any outburst from him. Mr. Patterson, Matthew, and I sat at a corner table, awaiting George's arrival with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. George walked in, his arrogance filling the room. Spotting us, he approached with a sneer. "What is this? An intervention?" he mocked, his voice dripping with disdain. "Sit down, George. We need to talk," Mr. Patterson said, his voice stern, devoid of the warmth he once showed his son. George's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Talk about what? Elizabeth, if this is about more money, you can forget it." "It's not about money, George," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It's about your actions, the abuse and the theft." George laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Abuse? Elizabeth, you always were dramatic. And theft? You're delusional." I held his gaze, my resolve unwavering. "No, George, I'm not delusional. We have proof." I slid the folder containing the diary entries and recordings across the table. His face paled as he glanced through the documents, his facade beginning to crack. "This is nonsense," he spat, but his voice lacked conviction. Matthew leaned forward, his eyes hard. "We also know about the embezzlement, George. You've been stealing from your company." George's composure shattered. "You can't prove anything?" he hissed. Mr. Patterson interjected. "We can and we will. I can't believe I raised a son who could do such things." The confrontation escalated, with George alternating between denial and bluster. But the evidence was irrefutable. His mask of respectability had slipped, revealing the monster beneath. As we left the cafe, George's parting words were a venomous threat. "You'll regret this," he snarled. But we walked away, united and stronger for having faced him. The path to justice was clear, and George's reign of terror was coming to an end. The aftermath of the confrontation was a whirlwind of activity. With the evidence in hand, we approached George's company with the allegations of embezzlement. The company acted swiftly, launching an internal investigation that corroborated our claims. George was fired, his career in ruins. Simultaneously, I pursued legal action for alimony and damages for the years of abuse. The court proceedings were grueling, but I stood my ground, bolstered by the support of Matthew and Mr. Patterson. The diary and recordings played a crucial role, painting a vivid picture of the life I had endured with George. In the end, justice was served. The court ruled in my favor, granting a substantial settlement that would secure my financial independence. George, now a pariah, faced not only the loss of his career, but also the scorn of those he had deceived. The victory was bittersweet. While I had won my freedom and vindication, the years lost to George's abuse could never be reclaimed. Yet there was a sense of closure, a feeling that a chapter of my life had been conclusively closed. With the legal battles behind me, I turned my focus to rebuilding my life. Matthew and I, now reconciled, decided to renovate my mother's house, transforming it into a home filled with love and memories, free from the shadows of the past. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but I emerged stronger, with a newfound sense of self and purpose. The scars of the past would always be a part of me, but they no longer defined me. I was ready to start anew, to live a life of my own choosing, unencumbered by the specter of George. The future was mine to shape, and I embraced it with open arms and a hopeful heart. In the tranquil setting of the renovated house, now a haven of peace and new beginnings, I sat with Matthew on the porch, reflecting on our journey. The evening air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers, a testament to the new life we had cultivated. "Elizabeth, do you ever regret it? Confronting George, exposing him?" Matthew asked, his voice tinged with both curiosity and concern. I paused, considering his question. "No, Dad, I don't regret it. It was difficult, but it needed to be done. For too long I let him control my life, my happiness." "No more," I replied, my voice firm, echoing the resolve I felt inside. Matthew nodded, a look of pride crossing his face. "You're strong, Elizabeth, stronger than you ever realized." The conversation shifted to our future plans. I expressed a desire to use my experience to help others who might be suffering in silence. I want to be a voice for those who feel voiceless, to help them find the strength to seek help, I said, my determination clear. Matthew supported my ambition, offering to help in any way he could. "Let's do it together, Elizabeth. Let's make a difference." Our plans were interrupted by an unexpected visitor, Mr. Patterson. He arrived with a somber expression, requesting a private word with me. We stepped aside, and he shared news that sent a chill down my spine. "Elizabeth, it's about George," he began, his voice heavy. "He's spiraling out of control. After losing his job and reputation, he's been seen wandering the streets, shouting your name, blaming you for his downfall." A mix of emotions surged within me, fear, pity, and a lingering anger. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Patterson, but he brought this upon himself. His actions, his choices led him here," I responded, my heart heavy but my resolve unwavering. Mr. Patterson nodded, understanding my stance. "I know, Elizabeth. I just thought you should be aware. We're handling it, trying to get him the help he needs." As Mr. Patterson left, I stood there, a sense of finality washing over me. George's downfall was his own doing, a consequence of his actions and choices. While I hoped he would find some semblance of peace, I knew my path lay elsewhere. Turning back to Matthew, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Our experiences had brought us closer, and together we were embarking on a new chapter, one filled with hope and the promise of making a difference. In the quiet of the evening, as the sun set on the horizon, I realized that this journey had not only been about revenge or justice. It had been a journey of self-discovery, of finding my voice and reclaiming my life. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape, and I stepped into it with a heart full of hope and a spirit unbroken. "You really think wearing that will make a good impression?" Ethan's words echoed in my mind as I stared at my reflection. I smoothed my hands over the simple black dress I had chosen for dinner with his parents tonight. It wasn't flashy or expensive, but it was me. Or at least, I thought it was until now. Doubts swirled as I recalled Ethan's tone when he saw my outfit earlier. Was he right? Maybe I should have worn something more formal and elegant. But as an emerging artist barely scraping by, my wardrobe was limited. I sighed, pushing the negative thoughts away. I had to stop second-guessing myself. The doorbell rang and I took a deep breath. It was now or never. Ethan greeted me with a weak smile and a peck on the cheek. We drove in tense silence to his parents' lavish downtown apartment. I gazed up at the sleek high-rise apprehensively. "Don't worry, you look great," Ethan finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. My doubts returned, but before I could respond, we were stepping into the cold marble foyer. The sound of my modest heels echoed loudly. "Ethan, so good of you to come," a tall, imposing man greeted us, Ethan's father, Harold. His eyes moved to me, looking me up and down critically. "And you must be. Marina, is it?" I nodded, extending my hand. He shook it limply before turning away. Come in. Dinner's just being served." The expansive apartment was impeccably decorated, with artwork adorning the walls and luxurious furnishings throughout. I sat awkwardly at the large dining table across from Ethan and his parents. An ornate chandelier hung above us. "So, Marina, Ethan tells me you're an artist?" Harold asked after the salad course was served. "Yes, I'm focused on mixed media collage," I replied. Harold raised his eyebrows. "Mixed media collage? Can't say I'm familiar with that particular medium." "Oh, it involves incorporating various materials like papers, fabrics, natural objects." My voice trailed off under his skeptical gaze. An uncomfortable silence descended on the table. "Well, I'm sure it's very avant-garde," Harold finally said dismissively. "But you must realize very few artists actually make a living from such endeavors, right?" I stared down at my plate, my cheeks burning. Where was Ethan in all this? Why wasn't he defending me? I snuck a glance at him, but he seemed completely oblivious, consumed with his food. "Of course," Harold continued, "art is a wonderful hobby for a young woman like yourself, but you need a practical career as well, like finance or law. Don't you agree, Ethan?" Ethan looked up, nodding meekly. "You make a fair point, Dad." I gritted my teeth, humiliation washing over me. The rest of the dinner passed painfully until finally it was over. Ethan and I rode the elevator down to the car in silence. It wasn't until we were driving away that he finally spoke. "I'm really sorry about my dad," he said half-heartedly. "You know how traditional and superficial he can be." I just stared out the window, holding back angry tears. Maybe this relationship was a mistake after all. The weekend after the disastrous dinner, I found myself reluctantly agreeing to a second meeting with Ethan's family. Part of me wanted to end things then and there, but another part still clung to the hope that maybe it was just first impressions. Maybe if I tried again, they would see me for who I really am. Ethan seemed genuinely apologetic about his dad's behavior. "Just give him another chance," he pleaded. "He's old-fashioned, but I know if he gets to know you better, he'll come around." I finally acquiesced, though I knew deep down it was a long shot. Harold and the rest of Ethan's family cared about one thing only: status. Still, I had to try for Ethan's sake. I decided to meet with my mentor Louise beforehand, hoping she could provide some encouragement. She was the one who had first encouraged me to pursue art, even when others said it was impractical. "This boy should be standing up for you," Louise said as we sipped tea in her cozy kitchen. "If he doesn't appreciate who you are, then he's not worth it." Her words resonated with me. I had compromised myself too much for Ethan, dimming my light to avoid outshining his inferiority complex. His weakness revealed the hollowness at the core of his ostentatious family. Their lives were dictated by petty hierarchies and prejudices. I left Louise's house with newfound clarity and a bold idea. I decided I would wear one of her pieces, an exquisite jacket made of paper, cardboard, and fabric scraps, to the family dinner. I knew Harold would scoff at it for looking like arts and crafts, but its beauty stemmed from Louise's brilliant technique of transforming discarded materials into art. The night of the dinner came. My hands trembled slightly as I fastened the final button on the jacket. This was my line in the sand. Ethan clearly felt some trepidation when he arrived to pick me up. "That jacket's different," he noted delicately. I lifted my chin, steadying my resolve. "Yes, it's one of a kind, like me." He nodded, looking away awkwardly. My courage grew. At Harold's apartment, I immediately felt his scornful glare on my outfit, but before he could deride it, I spoke up proudly. "My jacket was handmade by Louise Sanders. I'm sure you've heard of her brilliant found object creations." Harold paused, seeming temporarily impressed. "Louise Sanders? Isn't she that new avant-garde designer featured in Vogue last month?" "The one and the same," I confirmed. "Oh yes, of course," Harold exclaimed with forced enthusiasm. "Her work with recycled materials is so innovative." I smiled victoriously as we sat down to dinner. For once, the power dynamic felt shifted in my favor. Ethan kept grinning at me appreciatively throughout the meal, but Harold's superficiality shone through once again as he remarked, You know, Marina, with Louise Sanders' pieces skyrocketing in value, you really should consider auctioning off that jacket. I'm sure you could make a tidy sum. You clearly have a good eye for fashion. I nearly choked on my wine. Even now, he could only see the monetary value of art and creativity. Louise and I were vessels for him to increase his fortune and prestige. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. When Ethan dropped me home, I felt nothing but disdain roiling inside me. The time had come for me to stand up and walk away from this toxic, vacuous family. After the second disastrous dinner with Ethan's family, I found myself at a crossroads. The blatant disrespect and condescension I had experienced left me reeling. I knew I deserved better, but a small part of me still clung to the hope that our relationship could be salvaged. Ethan kept apologizing and begging me for another chance. "It will be different this time, I promise," he pleaded. "Just give them one more chance to get to know the real you." I was reluctant. The first 2 meetings had gone terribly, leaving me feeling belittled and small. But maybe I owed it to Ethan to try one last time before walking away for good. Before agreeing to anything, I met with my mentor Louise again, seeking her wisdom. She listened thoughtfully as I recounted the details of that night: Harold's dismissiveness towards my career, the passive aggression masked as superficial compliments. Louise shook her head, a hint of anger in her eyes. "This whole family sounds toxic, Marina. Sometimes you have to know when enough is enough." I knew she was right. I had compromised myself time and again to appease their egos. I deserved to be with someone who valued me for who I was. Still, there was a tiny part of me that hoped Ethan would finally stand up for me if I gave him this one last chance. I decided to agree to a final dinner, but I would do it on my own terms this time. No more diminishing myself for their comfort. When Ethan arrived to pick me up, I wore an even bolder outfit, adorned with pieces from several emerging designers. I could see the surprise in Ethan's eyes, but he said nothing as we drove to meet his parents. At dinner, Harold's eyes lingered on my clothes with unveiled disdain. Before he could make a snide remark, I spoke up. "I'm wearing some new designers, ones who are doing groundbreaking work experimenting with sustainable materials. Since you have such an interest in fashion, I thought you'd appreciate these conscious pieces." Harold's mouth snapped shut, unable to formulate a response. The rest of Ethan's family shifted uncomfortably. As dinner progressed, I continued speaking out passionately about my beliefs, challenging their superficial mindsets. With each word, I felt myself reclaiming my power. Ethan watched me with a stunned expression, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. Finally, Harold sneered. "What's gotten into you tonight, Marina? This new attitude of yours is quite off-putting." I smiled calmly as I stood up from my seat. "With all due respect, nothing has gotten into me. This is who I have been all along. But instead of appreciating that, you have dismissed and belittled me at every turn. I see now that our values are simply incompatible. Ethan, I'm sorry, but we're over. I wish you and your family all the best." With that, I turned and walked away from that life forever, my head held high. I stepped out into the night feeling freer than I had in years. It was time for me to focus on people who would value me for who I was. This experience had given me the strength and clarity I needed to live authentically, without compromising my integrity ever again. After walking out on Ethan and his family, I was filled with a new sense of purpose. The ultimate revenge would be showing them I could thrive without their approval or validation. I decided to put all my energy into an upcoming gallery showcase organized by my mentor Louise. She had curated an exhibit featuring work from young avant-garde artists like myself. It was the perfect opportunity to announce myself to the Chicago art scene. My centerpiece would be a mixed-media sculpture I had been working on for months, incorporating materials scavenged from thrift stores and garage sales. Each piece represented a fragmented memory from my relationship with Ethan. I wanted to transform that experience into impactful art. In the weeks leading up to the exhibit, I worked day and night on my sculpture. Using blue torches, power tools, and adhesives, I obsessively shaped wire, broken mirror shards, rusted metal, and tattered fabrics into an abstract human form. When the piece was finally complete, Louise came by my studio to see it. I watched nervously as she circled it, taking in every angle. Finally, she spoke. "This is your best work yet, Marina. So raw and yet beautiful. It will stun people. Her validation filled me with confidence. This was the moment I would stake my claim as an important young artist, and Ethan's family would regret ever dismissing me. On the night of the opening, I could hardly breathe as people began trickling into the gallery. The lights illuminated my sculpture provocatively, its jagged edges and distorted shape confrontational, yet captivating. I mingled nervously, awaiting people's reactions, but as I glanced around the room, I did a double take. There in the corner were none other than Ethan and his parents. Our eyes met briefly before Ethan looked away awkwardly. What were they doing here? Louise must have included them on the invite list before everything happened. I watched as they made their way slowly around the exhibit, Harold looking bored and unimpressed. Finally, they came upon my sculpture. They stared at it silently, confusion etched on their faces. Harold turned to me. "You made this thing?" he asked in a patronizing tone. I stepped towards them boldly. "Yes. This sculpture represents my personal journey over the past year, transforming pain into art." Harold snorted derisively. "Well, I can't say I understand it. A little too avant-garde for my taste." I stood tall, holding his gaze. "Maybe you're just not looking closely enough." Around us, other attendees began taking notice of the tense interaction. Voices murmured, "Isn't that Marina Caldwell, the artist?" Harold shifted uncomfortably under the attention. For once, I felt in control. This was my space, my world. I spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "If you'll excuse me, I should continue mingling. So glad you could make it to see my work." With that, I turned and rejoined the crowd, leaving them to reckon with a world they could neither understand nor control. My moment of retaliation was complete. In the weeks following the art gallery showcase, I thrilled in the glow of my newfound success. The local press had raved about my bold and confrontational sculpture. My piece was now in high demand, with offers coming in from collectors across the country. After years of struggling and doubting myself, I was finally being recognized on my own terms. And knowing that Ethan's arrogant family had borne witness to my talent blossoming made it all the sweeter. One morning, I arrived at my studio to find an ornate envelope waiting on my work table. The return address was Ethan's parents' downtown high-rise. Curiosity mixed with apprehension as I tore it open. The heavy cardstock invitation announced the opening of a new contemporary art gallery in their building. At the bottom was a handwritten note from Ethan's mother. "Dear Marina, your remarkable work at Louise's recent showcase inspired Harold and I to venture into the art world ourselves. We would be honored if you would attend the grand opening of our gallery next weekend. We truly hope to see your sculpture displayed at the space one day." Warmly, Elizabeth first nearly burst out laughing. They wanted me to be part of their vanity project? After years of scorn and dismissal towards my craft, I decided I would attend their opening, if only to see them humiliate themselves trying to fit into my world. That Saturday, I dressed in an avant-garde, daring outfit and walked into their pristine gallery space. One glance confirmed it was exactly as I expected, all style over substance. Trendy, abstract paintings adorned the walls, clearly chosen by an overpriced consultant. Ethan's parents rushed towards me eagerly. "Marina, so delighted you could come," gushed Elizabeth. Harold grinned next to her. "We'd love to give you a tour of the space," he offered. As we meandered through the rooms, they name-dropped artists and raved about each meaningless piece. I hid my smirk. Finally, we arrived at the back room. "We've saved the best for last," Elizabeth said. They stepped aside, revealing my sculpture prominently displayed. "We acquired this from Louise's gallery," Harold announced proudly. "It's the crown jewel of our collection." I froze, rage simmering through me. "You bought my piece?" I asked incredulously. "Well, we wanted to showcase the city's best emerging talent," Elizabeth trilled. My anger spilled over. "Talent which you did nothing but deride and dismiss for years," I shot back. "You don't get to buy your way into my world when it's convenient for you." I barged past their shocked faces and stormed out, refusing to let them taint my success for their vanity. My work was never for sale to the likes of them. The look on their faces was payment enough for me. In the aftermath of the disastrous art gallery opening, I refused to let Ethan's family intimidate me into submission. If anything, their brazen attempt to acquire my work had lit a fire in me. I was more determined than ever to call them out in a public, scathing act of defiance. Louise cautioned me to take the high road. "Their actions already reflect poorly on them," she said gently. "You don't need to stoop to their level." But my anger and hurt went deeper than logic. I decided to attend a prestigious charity benefit that I knew Ethan's family would be at. It was time for a very public reckoning. I wore a simple black sheath dress and an icy expression as I entered the ballroom, immediately spotting Ethan and his parents holding court. As we locked eyes, I noted nervousness in Harold's face, but I didn't plan to confront them directly. That would be too kind. During the program, a wealthy benefactor took the stage to announce a major donation. I recognized him from the newspaper, a real estate mogul who had ruthlessly bought up low-income housing and displaced families, all in the name of progress. When polite applause sounded, I stood up and booed loudly. Shocked faces turned to me. Before anyone could react, I strode onto the stage and grabbed the microphone. "This man deserves condemnation, not celebration," I declared passionately to the stunned crowd. "He is responsible for rampant gentrification and suffering of the vulnerable. His donation is blood money." Murmurs arose as security rushed towards me, but I continued staring defiantly until they hauled me away. The story would make headlines tomorrow, I knew. Ethan appeared at my side as I was escorted out. "Marina, what were you thinking?" he hissed. I met his eyes unwaveringly. "The better question is, what are you thinking? Aligning yourself with these toxic elites, letting them stomp on others." My voice rose with anger. "You've thrown away every good thing between us to worship at the altar of greed and status." I stepped closer and spat out my final blow. "You and your whole damned family deserve each other." I shoved past Ethan, leaving him speechless amidst the swirling chaos. My heels clicked across the marble lobby as I strode outside with my head held high, finally free of their grasp. The next weeks passed in a blur. My defiant act had gone viral, with many lauding me as a champion for justice. Galleries and universities invited me to speak. My calendar filled with events and interviews. One morning, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened it to find Ethan holding a single red rose. Before he could speak, I stepped forward and shut the door firmly in his face. I had nothing left to say to him or his family. My sights were set on a new horizon now. Let Ethan's privileged world crumble under the weight of its own rotten foundation. I would continue shining light on those they had trampled. With my new platform, I was only getting started. In the weeks after I publicly denounced Ethan's family, fallout from the scandal spread steadily through Chicago's elite circles. Whispers followed Ethan's parents everywhere, with friends and colleagues carefully avoiding them at social events. Their real estate empire took a hit as partners withdrew investments, not wanting the negative publicity. Harold responded by trying to smooth things over, penning op-eds and making appearances at charity events, but his desperate attempts to salvage his family's reputation only made things worse. Meanwhile, my career catapulted to new heights. The fame from my defiant, viral act earned me features in major publications. Galleries clamored to host my work. Invitations poured in for speaking engagements across the country. It was a gratifying vindication after years of patronization from Ethan's family. They had sneered at my unsophisticated art, oblivious to the raw talent right under their noses. How quickly the tides had changed. At my recent openings, I scanned the room, almost hoping to witness Harold and Elizabeth attending like scorned groupies. But of course, they were too humiliated to show their faces now. One evening, I arrived home to find an envelope wedged in my door. My guard immediately went up, thinking it was another pathetic plea from Ethan. But the return address was from Louise's gallery. Inside was a printed email between her and a writer for ArtNet News. "Hello, Louise. I'm working on a piece about Chicago's rising art stars and would love to feature Marina Caldwell. Her scathing manifesto against elitism took real courage. Do you have quotes you could contribute about her talent and integrity? Many thanks, Sam." I hugged the note to my chest, Louise's words warming me. Marina has always had a vision and voice far beyond her years. She turns injustice into art that makes you think and feel. Stay tuned, because this is only the beginning for her. After the darkness of recent months, it was profoundly moving to read Louise's unwavering support laid out. No matter what vitriol or opposition I faced, she believed in my gifts. I penned a heartfelt letter to Louise, thanking her for standing by me. I hoped one day I could be that kind of mentor to an emerging creative spirit. That was the only power and legacy I aspired to now. Let Ethan and his family cling to their dwindling status and wealth, constantly looking over their shoulders. I didn't need them or their world. I had everything I needed: my voice, my vision, and people who genuinely nurtured my talents rather than exploiting them. And that was worth more than they could ever grasp. In the weeks following the explosive will reading, I threw myself into learning the brewery business. As Dad's handpicked successor, I needed to understand every aspect of the company now under my stewardship. I toured the grounds, talking with employees and learning their roles hands-on. The seasoned workers taught me the intricate brewing process, from selecting premium ingredients right down to bottling and distribution. As I reviewed accounting records, the picture came into clear focus. Dad built this empire from the ground up, showing me the deeper meaning behind his years of endless work. The company meant far more than profit margins to him. It meant community, jobs for hundreds, partnerships with local farms, families sustained for generations. The brewery wove lives together in a way I never fully appreciated until now. Late one evening, as I finalized a new hire's papers, loud shouts rang out from the parking lot. I rushed outside to investigate. My gut tightened at what I saw. Evelyn and Declan stood screaming at Tham, Dad's loyal head brewer of 20 years. In the shadows lurked several suited men with hard expressions. Evelyn's usually polished blonde hair hung in frazzled strands as she jabbed a finger at Tham. "You have no right to block us," she shrilled. "Marshall promised us control." Tham stood firm, arms crossed. "This is Mr. Ryder's brewery now, as Mr. Marshall wanted. I aim to uphold his wishes." Declan grabbed Tom's shirt, wrenching the older man close. "Tell us the access codes to the system mainframe now," he growled, "or my associates will convince you the hard way." The suited men cracked their knuckles, malice glinting in their eyes. Tham paled but lifted his chin. "I won't betray Mr. Marshall's son. Do your worst." Rage exploded within me. I stalked forward, muscles coiled tight. "Let him go!" My shout echoed sharply. Everyone froze. Evelyn recovered first, her smile dripping false sweetness. "Ryder, darling, we were just having a chat with Tham here." I cut through her facade with a blistering glare. "Get off my property, now." Declan released Tham hastily as they scrambled to their car. Pausing, Evelyn hissed at me, "You'll pay for this," before peeling out down the road. I watched them go, chest heaving. So now they resorted to threats and violence, revealing desperation to reclaim what they considered their lost inheritance. Well, that was never happening. I turned to Tham, who gave me a grateful nod. In that small gesture, I recognized the deeper bond of trust Dad and Tham shared now flowing to me. As we walked back inside, steely purpose took root within me. Evelyn and Declan wanted war? Fine. For the brewery, for Dad and for Tham, I would give them absolute hell. No more playing nice. That time ended when they laid hands on my people and tried dismantling Dad's legacy. If those snakes wanted a fight, I would rain fire on their ambitions until only ashes remained. My father's company now lived through me, and I protected what was mine. Years had passed since I walked away from Ethan and his toxic family. In that time, my career and self-confidence flourished beyond what I could have imagined. After publicly calling them out, doors opened for me to elevate other unheard voices through my art. Galleries and universities gave me platforms to share searing work exposing social injustice. My days filled with passion and purpose as I collaborated with inspiring minds. The fame and fortune were secondary. I treasured the connections most of all. Of course, the curiosity lingered about whatever became of Ethan and his parents after their spectacular downfall. I caught occasional rumors of them selling off assets and withdrawing from the public eye. But I felt no desire to follow up or relish their suffering. I had made my point and moved on. Their world held no appeal for me anymore, nor any power over my life path. One morning, an envelope arrived containing a wedding invitation from my friend Sophie, another artist and outspoken spirit. I smiled, remembering late nights working together in my cramped studio, dreaming of the day our voices would be heard. That evening, I eagerly attended her show, first displaying the two of us as young hopefuls. Seeing our unjaded faces juxtaposed with who we had become was profoundly moving. Pride welled up in me for Sophie, and for my own growth. As I gazed at the photos, one figure standing sullenly in the corner caught my eye. Ethan. A part of our history together I had forgotten. Sophie noticed my stare and came over. "Ancient history," she said, squeezing my shoulder. I nodded, letting the past dissolve once more. At Sophie's wedding the next weekend, I toasted her and her husband, celebrating the power of love between partners who see each other fully. No pretense or jockeying for control, just joyful union. My own romantic life had seen ups and downs over the years. I endured some hard lessons on the path to knowing my worth, but I approached relationships now with wisdom to recognize truth and reciprocity. During the reception, Sophie's father Ron, a retired steelworker, approached me. "I'm so thankful Sophie had you as a friend starting out," he said gruffly. "You always valued her for who she really is." I squeezed his calloused hand, overcome with emotion. This was the only legacy I cared about, lifting up others so their light could shine. As a new day dawned, I awoke filled with gratitude for the hard-won lessons that shaped me. I had broken free from toxic expectations and found my voice. What lay ahead I didn't know, but I would meet it boldly, without compromise. The moonlight spilled across the room, casting a serene glow on what should have been a peaceful honeymoon suite. But the tranquility was a facade, shattered by hushed voices that sliced through the stillness and into my heart. Ethan's words, laced with deceit, were like venom. "She's asleep. It's a real shame it's not you I'm marrying, Natalie." I lay still, my heart pounding in my chest. I was supposed to be sleeping, lost in dreams of our new life together. Instead, I was a silent spectator to my own betrayal. The cold realization settled in. My sister Natalie and my husband Ethan were plotting against me. On our honeymoon. "Ethan, you're wicked." Natalie's voice was soft coo, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. "But what if Lauren finds out?" "She won't. I've made sure of that." Ethan's confidence was chilling. Tears threatened to escape, but I willed them back. I couldn't reveal my awareness. Not yet. I needed to know more, to understand the depth of their treachery. As their whispers faded into the night, my mind raced. The memories of our wedding day, once vibrant and joyful, now twisted into a cruel joke. Natalie, always in the shadows, waiting to snatch what was mine. And Ethan, the man I had loved and trusted, the architect of my heartbreak. I remembered the white dress Natalie wore at the wedding, how it stood out, a deliberate choice to upstage me. Ethan's compliment to her then made sense now, a signal of their hidden alliance. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, painting a picture of deceit I couldn't ignore. When dawn broke, I rose from the bed, a plan forming in my mind. I was Lauren Harper, and if they thought they could play me for a fool, they were sorely mistaken. I was going to fight back, not just for my pride, but for every moment they had stolen from me. I slipped out of the room, my steps silent but determined. The cool morning air was a balm to my seething anger. I needed evidence, undeniable proof of their betrayal. It was the only way to ensure they couldn't wriggle out of their web of lies. Returning to the room, I found Ethan and Natalie in a seemingly innocent breakfast conversation, but the undercurrent of their secret was palpable. I joined them, my facade of ignorance perfectly in place. "How did you sleep, Lauren?" Ethan asked, his voice a sickening blend of concern and deceit. "Like a baby," I lied, my voice steady. "I feel completely refreshed." Natalie smiled, but her eyes couldn't mask the guilt. "That's great. Today's going to be amazing." Yes, it would be, but not in the way they expected. The morning sun glared through the windows, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. As Ethan and Natalie chatted about the day's plans, my mind wandered back to the wedding, the day when the seeds of deception were sown. The memory of Natalie in her white dress at my wedding was vivid, an intentional act of defiance against unwritten social rules. The dress wasn't just an outfit choice, it was a statement, a silent declaration of her intentions. Ethan had complimented her, "That flowy dress suits your petite frame." His words, once innocuous, now echoed with hidden meaning. I remembered feeling a twinge of unease then, quickly dismissed as wedding day jitters. But it was more than that. It was my intuition sensing the undercurrents of betrayal. The way Ethan's eyes lingered on Natalie, the stolen glances they thought I hadn't noticed. Our honeymoon in Bali was supposed to be an escape, a celebration of our love. Yet here I was, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. The realization that Natalie had followed us here was like a punch to the gut. How could she? How could they? I excused myself from breakfast under the pretext of needing fresh air. Alone on the balcony, I allowed myself a moment of vulnerability. The tears came then, hot and unrelenting, but with each tear shed my resolve hardened. I wiped my face, my tears not a sign of weakness, but fuel for the fire of revenge burning within me. Back in our room, I began my plan. I needed evidence, something concrete to expose them. I rummaged through Ethan's belongings when he was in the shower, looking for any proof of their affair. Then, in his coat pocket, I found it. A small piece of jewelry, a locket I had never seen before, unmistakably feminine. I held the locket, a tangible piece of their deceit. It was more than enough to start my retribution. I placed it back carefully, covering my tracks. They wouldn't know I was onto them, not until I was ready to strike. The rest of the day was a blur, a performance of the happy bride while my mind plotted their downfall. Each smile, each touch from Ethan was a lie that added to the ledger of his betrayal. And Natalie, playing the role of the doting sister, was no better. As night fell, and they retreated to their secret rendezvous, I lay awake. My heart was a battleground of sorrow and rage. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. They had underestimated me. Lauren Harper was not a victim. She was a woman scorned, and she would have her revenge. The following days in Bali were a masterclass in deception. Ethan and Natalie believed their secret safe, but I was watching, gathering the pieces of their treachery to weave their downfall. I started by accidentally leaving my phone recording in our room when I knew they'd be alone. The things they said, their words were like daggers. "Lauren's nice and all, but she's so naive," Natalie chuckled. Ethan's reply was a twist of the knife. "That's what makes this easy. She trusts us completely." Hearing my sister and husband mock my trust was a searing pain, a betrayal that transcended heartbreak. But it fueled my resolve. This recording was the evidence I needed. But I wanted more. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the pain they caused me. One evening, as we strolled along the beach, I brought up our wedding. "Ethan, didn't Natalie look stunning in that white dress? Almost like a bride herself," I said, my voice laced with feigned innocence. Ethan stuttered, his facade cracking. "Well, yeah, it was a nice dress." Natalie shot him a look, a silent warning. "Oh, it was just a dress, Lauren. You were the star, of course." Their discomfort was palpable, a small victory in my silent war. But my greatest move came the night before we were to leave Bali. I had convinced them to have a farewell dinner, a toast to our wonderful honeymoon. Little did they know, I had arranged for a private investigator to take photos of their secret meetings. As we raised our glasses, I smiled, the predator, not the prey. "To new beginnings," I toasted, my words heavy with unspoken meaning. "To new beginnings," they echoed, unaware of the storm on the horizon. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought of the life I had envisioned with Ethan, of the future we were supposed to have. But that life was a lie, one I was no longer willing to live. Tomorrow, I would leave Bali, but I wouldn't be leaving alone. I would be taking their secrets, their lies, and turning them into weapons of my own. The journey back from Bali was a silent one. Ethan and Natalie chatted idly, unaware of the storm brewing within me. As we landed, I felt a sense of liberation, the chains of their deceit no longer holding me. At home, I acted quickly. I contacted a lawyer, presenting the evidence I had gathered. The recordings, the locket, and the photos from the investigator painted a clear picture of Ethan and Natalie's affair. My lawyer, a stern-faced woman with a sharp mind, was appalled. "We'll make sure they get what they deserve, Lauren." That evening, as Ethan returned from work, I greeted him with a smile, masking the turmoil inside. "How was your day, dear?" I asked, my voice dripping with feigned sweetness. "It was good, busy as usual," he replied, oblivious to the undercurrents. Natalie, who had come over for dinner, added, "You must be exhausted, Ethan. Let me get you a drink." Watching them, a sense of disgust washed over me. How could they be so callous, so cruel? Dinner was a charade. Ethan and Natalie played their parts well, but I could see the cracks in their armor. Every smile, every touch between them was a confession of their guilt. "Lauren, this dish is amazing," Ethan complimented, his words hollow. I smiled, my heart hardening. "I'm glad you like it. I wanted to make something special tonight." As the night wore on, I excused myself, citing tiredness. Alone in my room, I finalized my plans. Tomorrow I would confront them, expose their lies for all to see. I had arranged for our families to meet under the guise of a belated wedding celebration. It would be the perfect stage for my revelation. The next morning, as we gathered at the venue, the tension was palpable. Ethan and Natalie were nervous, their smiles strained. Our families chatted, unaware of the drama about to unfold. I stood, glass in hand, commanding the room's attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," I began, my voice steady. "To truth and honesty, the foundation of any relationship." Ethan's eyes widened, a flicker of fear passing through them. Natalie's hand trembled ever so slightly. "To truth and honesty," the room echoed, raising their glasses. The moment had come. "I have something to share," I announced, my voice ringing clear. "Something about Ethan and Natalie." The room fell silent, all eyes on me. This was it, the moment of reckoning. The moment when the mask of deceit would fall, and their true faces would be revealed for all to see. The air in the room was thick with anticipation as I faced our families and the two people who had betrayed me the most. Ethan and Natalie looked like deer caught in headlights, their facades crumbling under the weight of impending exposure. "I've discovered something unsettling," I began, my voice unwavering. "Ethan and Natalie have been having an affair, since before our wedding." Gasps filled the room. Ethan's face drained of color, while Natalie's eyes darted around, looking for an escape that didn't exist. "This can't be true," Ethan stammered, his voice betraying him. Natalie chimed in, her tone desperate. "Lauren, you're mistaken. This is crazy." I held up my phone, playing the recording of their conversation in Bali. Their own words filled the room, irrefutable proof of their deceit. "You're lying." Ethan's facade broke, anger replacing the fear. "You invaded our privacy." "Our privacy?" I echoed, my voice laced with scorn. "The privacy to betray me, your wife?" Natalie's eyes were filled with tears, but they sparked no sympathy in me. "Lauren, please, I never meant for this to happen. It just what, Natalie? Just happened to fall in love with my husband?" My voice was icy, cutting through her excuses. Ethan turned to our families, pleading, "This isn't what it looks like. Lauren's just upset." My father stood up, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment. "Ethan, how could you do this to our daughter? And Natalie, you're her sister!" The room erupted into chaos, with family members voicing their shock and disgust. Amidst the turmoil, I remained calm, the eye of the storm. This was the retribution I had sought, the exposure of their true selves. Ethan's mother approached me, her eyes filled with sadness. "Lauren, I am so sorry. We never knew Ethan could do something like this." Natalie was sobbing now, her image of the innocent sister shattered. "I'm sorry, Lauren. I never wanted to hurt you." Their apologies were empty, meaningless. The damage was done, the betrayal too deep. "I want a divorce, Ethan," I stated firmly. "And Natalie, consider our sisterhood over." As I walked out of the room, leaving behind the shattered pieces of what was once my life, I felt a surge of empowerment. They thought they could break me, but I emerged stronger, like the architect of their downfall. In the wake of the revelation, the fallout was immediate and severe. Ethan and Natalie found themselves isolated, their actions casting them adrift in a sea of judgment and scorn. I met Ethan one last time to finalize the divorce proceedings. He was a shadow of the confident man he once was, his eyes hollow with loss. "Lauren, can't we talk about this? I know I made a mistake, but—" "A mistake, Ethan?" I cut him off, my voice cold and unyielding. "You call an affair with my sister a mistake? There's nothing to discuss." He reached out, but I stepped back, out of his reach forever. "I never thought you'd take it this far," he said, a note of disbelief in his voice. "You never thought at all, Ethan. That was your mistake." With that, I left him standing alone, a man undone by his own actions. Natalie fared no better. Our parents, once her staunch defenders, were appalled by her behavior. They cut her off, both financially and emotionally. She tried to reach out to me, her messages a mix of apologies and pleas for understanding. "Lauren, please, I'm your sister. We can fix this," she texted. Her words a desperate clawing for redemption. I replied with a single sentence that severed our bond for good. "You ceased being my sister the moment you betrayed me." The community around us was unforgiving. Ethan's career suffered as his reputation crumbled. Natalie found herself ostracized, her social circle closing its doors to her. They were pariahs, their names synonymous with betrayal and deceit. In their downfall, I found a bitter satisfaction. They had underestimated me, thought they could use me as a pawn in their selfish game. But I turned the tables, exposing them for who they truly were. Yet, even in victory, there was a sense of loss. The end of my marriage, the severing of ties with my sister. These were wounds that would take time to heal. But I was determined to move forward, to rebuild my life on my own terms. As I watched Ethan and Natalie grapple with the consequences of their actions, a part of me took solace in the fact that justice, though harsh, had been served. They received the karmic retribution they deserved, a fitting end to their sordid tale. The weeks following the confrontation were a time of introspection and rebuilding for me. I watched as Ethan and Natalie's lives unraveled, their once bright futures dimmed by the shadow of their betrayal. One afternoon, I encountered Ethan in a coffee shop. He was alone, a far cry from the confident man he once was. "Lauren," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I've lost everything. My job, my reputation. I never realized how much I'd lose." I looked at him, seeing the man I once loved now broken by his own doing. "You didn't just lose, Ethan. You chose. You chose this path when you decided to betray me." He looked down, the weight of his choices etched on his face. "I'm sorry, Lauren. Truly sorry. Your apologies can't undo the past, Ethan. You have to live with what you did, just like I do." Leaving Ethan in his solitude, I walked away, feeling a sense of closure. I had moved past the need for revenge. My healing wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. Natalie's fall from grace was equally stark. Ostracized and alone, she reached out to me one last time. "Lauren, I've lost my job, my friends. I have nothing. Please, can't we put this behind us?" I responded with the finality of someone who had crossed a bridge and burned it behind her. "What we had as sisters is behind us, Natalie. You made your choice, and now you live with it. I've moved on." I heard the defeat in her silence, a silence that spoke volumes. In the months that followed, I threw myself into my work and my personal growth. I discovered strengths I never knew I had, and weaknesses I was now brave enough to face. The betrayal had shattered me, but in its wake, I found the pieces of who I truly was. Reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized that the experience, as painful as it was, had taught me invaluable lessons. About trust, about resilience, and about my own worth. As I looked to the future, I felt a sense of hope. I had risen from the ashes of my old life, stronger and more self-assured. The path ahead was mine to shape, and I stepped forward with confidence, ready for whatever came next. The evening air felt heavier as I pushed open the door to our modest living room, the familiar scent of home now laced with the tension of the unknown. "Dean?" My voice, steadier than I felt, cut through the silence. No answer. The house seemed to hold its breath as I moved towards the kitchen, the heart of our daily life, now the stage for a revelation that would shatter everything. There, amidst the scattered evidence of a hastily abandoned meal, stood Dean, his back to me, frozen mid-motion. Beside him, Alara, my once trusted friend, her face a poorly masked tableau of guilt and defiance. The scene before me, stark and unambiguous, rendered words unnecessary, yet I found myself demanding, "How long?" Dean's turn was slow, his usual confidence replaced by a look I couldn't decipher. "Cadence, he started, but the weakness in his voice only fueled my growing storm. Alara spoke next, her tone brazen. "Why act so surprised, Cadence? You must have seen this coming." Her words, sharp and reckless, aimed to wound. The pain of betrayal, deep and acute, threatened to overwhelm me, but I stood my ground. "You were my friend, Alara, and you," I turned to Dean, "you took vows. Our son, our family, do they mean nothing to you?" Dean's attempt at justification fell flat, his excuses sounding hollow even to his own ears. "It's not what you think, Cadence. We just found comfort in each other," I finished for him, my voice cold, my heart colder. "And you thought I wouldn't find out? Thought I'd just accept this?" The confrontation, charged with betrayal and hurt, laid bare the fissures in our lives. Dean, struggling to articulate his rationale, and Alara, defiant in her role as the other woman, represented everything I had to fight against. This was not just a personal betrayal. It was a war on the life we had built, on the promises made in the presence of love and trust. As I stood there, facing the two people who had jointly dismantled my trust, my resolve hardened. This was not the end of my story, but the beginning of my fight. For my dignity, for my son, for the life I deserved beyond the shadows of deceit. "I want you out," I said finally, my voice steady, my decision irrevocable. Both of you, tonight. Dean's protest was weak, Alara's silence a confirmation of her guilt. As they gathered their things, the weight of the moment settled on me. This was not just a confrontation. It was the first step towards reclaiming my life, towards a future where I no longer played the part of the unsuspecting victim. The door closed behind them with a finality that echoed through the empty house. Alone, yet unbroken, I knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something powerful within me. A determination to rise from the ashes of this betrayal, to forge a new path on my terms. And so, amid the ruins of my fractured life, I began to plan. For justice, for revenge, for a new beginning. The journey ahead would be long, but I was ready. The morning after Dean and Alara's departure, the house felt eerily silent, a void filled with echoes of the confrontation. The silence, however, was a canvas for my determination, a stark reminder of the betrayal and the need for action. I started the day with a purpose, reaching out to Lara, an old friend, and the one person I knew who could help me navigate the legal intricacies of what lay ahead. Lara, it's Cadence. I need your advice, legal advice. Her response was immediate, a testament to our enduring friendship. I'll be there in an hour. We'll figure this out together. As I waited, I couldn't help but replay last night's events, not with sadness, but with a growing sense of empowerment. By the time Lara arrived, I was ready, armed with the facts and fueled by a resolve to seek justice. Lara's expertise was invaluable. First, we secure your financial stability and custody of your son. Then, we address the betrayal. Dean and Alara cannot just walk away from this unscathed. Her plan was meticulous, a blend of legal strategy and personal vindication. We'll start by freezing the joint accounts and filing for sole custody. As for Alara, it's time she learns actions have consequences. The strategy session turned into action quickly. Lara's connections expedited the legal proceedings, and within days, Dean found himself confronted with the reality of his choices. You can't do this, Cadence. You're destroying everything. His voice, once confident, now pleaded over the phone. This is the bed you made, Dean. Now you lie in it. I responded, my voice void of the affection that once colored our conversations. Alara's reaction was of similar disbelief, her previous arrogance replaced with panic. Cadence, please, let's talk about this. We can find a way to make things right. There's nothing left to discuss. You both made your choices, and now you face the consequences, I replied, the finality in my voice mirroring the closure I sought. With Lara's help, the legal battles were swift, leaving Dean and Alara reeling from their losses. But revenge was not solely about legal victories. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about showing that betrayal of trust comes at a price. The community's reaction only added to their downfall. Friends and neighbors, once mutual confidants, sided with me, their disdain for Dean and Alara's actions evident in their support and the isolation that followed for the two of them. As the dust settled on the legal confrontations, a new sense of peace began to take root within me. The betrayal that once threatened to define my existence now served as a catalyst for my transformation. I was no longer the victim, but the architect of my destiny, a woman reborn from the ashes of deceit. With the legal battles behind me, the victory felt hollow. The community's support, while comforting, couldn't fill the void left by Dean's betrayal. It was time to rebuild, to focus on my son and the future we deserved. Yet, the shadow of vengeance lingered, a reminder that justice served did not equate to wounds healed. My resolve was tested when I encountered Dean at a mutual friend's gathering. His presence, once familiar and comforting, now sparked a tumult of emotions. Cadence, he began, his voice tinged with regret. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. The sincerity in his eyes tempted me to believe, to forgive. But the scars of betrayal ran deep. Sorry doesn't change what happened, Dean. You chose this path, not me, I replied, my words laced with the pain and strength forged from the ordeal. The encounter with Dean was a turning point, a realization that while legal revenge had been exacted, emotional closure was elusive. It was a lesson in the complexity of forgiveness, in the distinction between justice served and peace attained. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work and into being a mother. My son, innocent, in the wake of our shattered family, became my anchor, his laughter a balm for my soul. Through him I saw the possibility of a future unmarred by the past, a life rebuilt on the foundation of resilience and love. Yet, the journey of healing was not without its challenges. Alara, undeterred by her fall from grace, sought redemption in the eyes of those who had turned their backs. "Cadence, can we talk?" her message read, a plea for understanding, if not forgiveness. The decision to meet her was not easy. Face to face, the woman who had been my friend, then my betrayer, now sought my mercy. "I was wrong," she admitted, her eyes reflecting the weight of her choices. "I've lost everything, but I've learned. I'm truly sorry." The words I had longed to hear, yet their arrival brought no satisfaction. Forgiveness was a journey, not a destination, a path I was still navigating. "I appreciate your apology, Alara, but I can't undo the past, and I can't erase the pain. Maybe in time we'll both find peace." The days turned into weeks, each one a step further from the past and closer to a future I was still shaping. My world, once defined by the actions of others, now took form around the choices I made for myself and for my son. The legal victories and public vindication had faded into the background, replaced by the quieter, more challenging work of rebuilding from within. My journey was interrupted by an unexpected encounter with Dean at a community event. This time, his approach was hesitant, respectful of the distance I had put between us. "Cadence, I've been doing a lot of thinking," he started, his voice carrying a sincerity I hadn't heard before. "I know I can't change the past, but I'm here, trying to be a better person for our son." The mention of our child, the innocent caught in the crossfire of our decisions, softened the hard edges of my resolve. "He deserves the best of both of us," I admitted, the shared love for our son a bridge over the chasm of our past. This acknowledgement marked a shift, a door opening to the possibility of co-parenting with grace, if not friendship. The dialogue between us, once charged with anger and accusation, now treaded the delicate terrain of cooperation and mutual respect for the sake of the child who needed us both. In this new chapter, the antagonist of my story was no longer Dean or Alara, but the bitterness that threatened to poison my future. The realization that forgiveness was not a gift to those who wronged me, but a liberation for myself, began to take root. The process was neither easy nor immediate. There were days when the hurt resurfaced, a reminder of the scars that would never fully disappear. Yet, with each passing day, the choice to forgive, to release the hold of past grievances, became a little easier, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Amidst this personal evolution, a surprising ally emerged in Lara. Her unwavering support had been my anchor through the storm, and now she offered wisdom on the journey of forgiveness. "Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die," she reminded me one afternoon. "Forgiveness is for you, Cadence. It's the path to peace." Her words echoed in my heart, a mantra for the days when the weight of the past felt too heavy. And so I leaned into the discomfort, embracing the complex, often messy process of healing and forgiveness. The landscape of my life, once marred by betrayal and hurt, was slowly reshaping into something new, something hopeful. The process of forgiveness had led me down a path of unexpected growth, teaching me that even in the wake of devastation there can be renewal. In this new chapter, I found myself taking steps towards a future I had once thought impossible. My days were filled with the laughter of my son, the support of friends, and the satisfaction of personal achievements. The shadow of Dean and Ilara's betrayal had not disappeared, but had faded into the background, a part of my past that no longer defined me. An opportunity for a fresh start presented itself in the form of a new job, one that promised not just financial stability, but a chance to pursue my passions. "This is your moment, Cadence," Lara encouraged me the day I received the offer. "You've earned this." The decision to accept was easy, propelled by the desire to provide for my son and to prove to myself that I could rise above the challenges that had once threatened to consume me. "We're going to make a great life, just you and me," I whispered to my son, his small hand in mine, a symbol of our unbreakable bond. But life, as it often does, had more lessons in store for me. Dean's attempt to re-enter our lives, not as a partner but as a father seeking redemption, tested the boundaries of forgiveness I had worked so hard to establish. "I don't want to disrupt your lives, I just want to be a part of his," Dean said during one of our cautious, awkward meetings, gesturing towards our son. The complexity of emotions his request evoked was a reminder of the delicate balance between forgiveness and self-preservation. Yet, watching my son's tentative interactions with Dean, I recognized the value of reconciliation, not for Dean's sake, but for the innocent child who deserved to know his father. This period of adjustment was not without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, of fear that opening this door would invite back the pain I had fought so hard to overcome. But there were also moments of unexpected joy, of witnessing the tentative rebuilding of a relationship between father and son, grounded in cautious hope rather than blind trust. As the seasons changed, so too did the fabric of our lives, weaving a tapestry of resilience, forgiveness, and cautious optimism. The new job had not only brought financial stability, but also a renewed sense of self-worth and purpose. My son thrived in this environment of love and security, his laughter a constant reminder of why every struggle was worth enduring. However, life's narrative is seldom without conflict, and it wasn't long before a new challenge emerged, one that would test the strength of the fragile peace we had built. Alara, having navigated her own journey of loss and self-reflection, sought to re-enter our lives, not as a friend or foe, but as someone seeking closure and possibly redemption. "Cadence, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I need to make amends," she said during an unexpected encounter at a mutual acquaintance's gathering. The emotions her presence stirred were complex, a mixture of old wounds reopening and the recognition of shared human frailty. Her request for forgiveness, while sincere, demanded a level of magnanimity that felt almost insurmountable. Yet, in the spirit of the growth and healing I had committed to, I found myself willing to listen, if not fully ready to absolve. The dialogue between us was hesitant, each word measured, a dance around the pain of the past and the uncertainty of the future. "I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, Alara, but I'm willing to try to understand," I responded, acknowledging the power of forgiveness to heal not just the recipient, but the giver as well. This encounter, though fraught with emotional landmines, paved the way for a new understanding. Forgiveness, I realized, was not an erasure of the past, but a means of liberating oneself from the chains of bitterness and resentment. In the midst of navigating these personal upheavals, a surprise development at work offered an unexpected opportunity for advancement, a testament to my hard work and dedication. "Cadence, your leadership and innovation have not gone unnoticed. We'd like you to lead the new project," my supervisor announced, recognition that filled me with pride and reaffirmed my belief in my abilities and in the promise of new beginnings. The calm that had settled over my life was deceptive, a brief respite before the next storm. Just as I had begun to navigate the complexities of forgiveness and the challenges of my new role at work, an unexpected development threatened to upend the delicate balance I had achieved. A legal notice arrived without warning, a stark reminder that the past was not as far behind as I had hoped. Dean, motivated by a desire to reassert himself in our son's life, was challenging the custody arrangement. "I just want to be a part of his life, Cadence. I'm not the same man I was," he pleaded over the phone, his words echoing a sentiment I had heard before, yet underpinned by a desperation I hadn't seen in him. The battle lines were drawn once again, not in the courts of law this time, but in the arena of personal conviction and the unresolved tensions that lingered between us. "Our son needs stability, Dean. Your actions have consequences," I responded, the firmness in my voice belying the turmoil within. This new challenge forced me to confront not just Dean, but my own fears and uncertainties about the future. The prospect of revisiting old wounds, of fighting once more for what I believed was right for my son, was daunting. In the midst of this upheaval, Alara reached out, her timing impeccable. "I know we've had our differences, Cadence, but I'm here if you need someone to talk to," she offered, a gesture that, months ago, I would have dismissed outright. Yet, the journey we had both embarked on towards healing and understanding had shifted the dynamics between us. "Thank you, Alara. I appreciate that," I found myself saying, surprised by my own willingness to accept her olive branch. As the days passed, the tension surrounding the custody challenge grew. Meetings with lawyers and mediators became a routine part of my life, each encounter with Dean a test of my resolve and a measure of how far we had both come and how far we still had to go. The dialogue between us was fraught with the weight of our shared history, each word a testament to the complex web of emotions that bound us. "I'm not trying to take him away from you, Cadence. I just want to be a part of his life," Dean insisted, his plea a mix of sincerity and desperation. The resolution, when it came, was not a victory for one side or the other, but a compromise, a mutual agreement to put our son's needs above our own grievances. "We'll make it work for his sake," I conceded, recognizing the value of co-parenting in a way that provided our son with the love and support of both his parents, even if from a distance. The text message glowed accusingly on Derek's phone screen. "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again soon. X. Alex." My heart lurched into my throat as I stared at the provocative words, a knot of dread tightening in my gut. "Who the hell is Alex?" I asked, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Derek glanced up from his laptop, his handsome face a mask of innocence. "What are you talking about?" I thrust the phone at him. "Don't play dumb with me. Who is she and why is she sending you flirty texts in the middle of the night?" He barely looked at the screen before tossing the phone aside with an eye roll. "Relax, Cora. It's just a work thing. Alex is a colleague." At 1 a.m., talking about how amazing tonight was? Hot fury roiled through me. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" "Believe what you want," he said coolly, turning back to his computer. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I snatched the phone up again, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through more messages. Each one was like a knife blade to the heart. Inside jokes, winky faces, references to clandestine meetings. The evidence of my husband's betrayal mounted before my very eyes. "A year," I whispered, horror dawning as I pieced together the timeline. "These go back an entire year. How could you?" His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't look up. "You're being ridiculous. I'm not having this conversation." "No, we are definitely having this conversation." I grabbed his laptop and slammed it shut. He opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off, waving the phone in his face. "Explain this, Derek. Explain to me how your coworker is sending you texts about secret hookups and lacy red lingerie. Tell me this isn't what it looks like." For a long moment, he just stared at me, his face unreadable. Then he slowly stood up, towering over me. "You want the truth?" His voice was low and dangerous. "Fine. Yes, Alex and I are sleeping together, have been for months. And you know what? I don't regret a damn thing." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. "How could you?" I choked out. "After everything we've been through together, how could you throw it all away like this?" He barked a humorless laugh. "Don't act so high and mighty, Cora. Our marriage has been a sham for years. You're always working, always nagging me, never giving me a moment's peace. With Alex, I can actually breathe." Tears blurred my vision as his cruel words carved me hollow. I wanted to scream, to rage at him, to throw something, but I felt paralyzed, gutted, like he had reached in and ripped out everything that mattered. "I think you should go," I finally managed to whisper. "Get out of my sight before I do something we'll both regret." He smirked, grabbing his keys off the counter. "Best idea you've had in a long time. Don't wait up." The door slammed behind him with a boom of finality. I sank to the floor, buried my head in my hands, and let the floodgates burst open. Sobs racked my body as the perfect life I thought I had shattered around me like broken glass. How had it come to this? When did my marriage, my whole world, start crumbling without me even realizing it? The questions swirled in my mind, sharp and relentless. But one thing crystallized through the haze of anguish and fury. Derek would pay for this betrayal. If it was the last thing I did, I would make him regret the day he broke our vows and shattered my heart. This was only the beginning. The next morning I woke up with puffy eyes and a throbbing headache, the remnants of a sleepless night spent alternating between crying and seething. Derek's side of the bed was cold and empty, a stark reminder of the bombshell he had dropped on our marriage. I dragged myself out of bed and into the shower, letting the scalding water wash away the tears and the lingering scent of Derek's cologne. As I stood under the spray, a steely resolve settled over me. I refused to be the victim in this story. It was time to take action. My first call was to Lena, my ride-or-die best friend since college. She picked up on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. Cora, it's barely 7 a.m. This better be good. Derek's cheating on me, I said flatly. I found the text last night. It's been going on for a year. Silence stretched across the line for a beat, then Lena exploded. That slimy lying snake! I'll kill him. I'll rip him limb from limb with my bare hands. Despite everything, a small smile tugged at my lips. Lena's loyalty was fierce and unwavering. I need you to help me dig up dirt on him and his mistress. This is war, and I intend to win it. Consider it done, Lena said grimly. I've got your back, always. That scumbag picked the wrong woman to screw over. We spent the morning huddled over our laptops and phones, piecing together the sordid details of Derek's affair. Lena worked her social media magic, scouring profiles and timelines for incriminating evidence. I hacked into Derek's email, my stomach turning as I scrolled through months of explicit messages and hotel reservations. The picture that emerged was even worse than I had imagined. Alexis Reed, a leggy blonde, 10 years Derek's junior, worked as a junior associate at his law firm. Their affair had started as flirty banter over happy-hour drinks and quickly escalated into clandestine hookups in seedy motels and weekend getaways disguised as business trips. That snake, Lena hissed as we pored over the damning evidence. He's been living a double life this whole time, betraying you at every turn. I nodded grimly, a cold fury crystallizing in my veins. And now it's time to make him pay. We were deep in plotting mode when the front door slammed light, announcing Derek's return. He sauntered into the kitchen, his hair mussed and his shirt wrinkled. The stench of stale perfume clung to him like a second skin. Well, well, look what the cat dragged in, I said icily, crossing my arms. Have a good night with your mistress? His eyes narrowed. Don't start, Cora. I told you it's not what you think. Oh, so you didn't spend the night screwing your perky little secretary? The receipts beg to differ. I threw a stack of printed emails onto the counter. They fanned out like a dirty deck of cards, spelling out his betrayal in black and white. Derek blanched, his mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. Where did you get those? You had no right. I had every right, I snarled, slamming my hand down on the counter. I'm your wife, Derek. Or did you forget that when you were shacking up with your office slut? His face twisted with rage. Watch your mouth. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, I shot back. Sneaking around behind my back, funneling money into a secret account, planning a new life with her. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? For a moment, he looked almost guilty, but then his eyes hardened and he straightened up, squaring his shoulders. You know what? Fine. You caught me. But if you were half the wife Alexis is, maybe I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. His words sliced through me like razors, but I refused to let the pain show on my face. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. Get out, I said quietly, deadly calm. Get out of my house and my life. I'll be seeing you in court. The slamming of the front door echoed through the house like a gunshot, punctuating Derek's exit. I stood in the kitchen, my heart racing and my hands shaking with a toxic cocktail of fury and adrenaline. Lena placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. You okay? She asked gently. I shook my head, blinking back the hot tears that threatened to spill over. No, but I will be, once I make that bastard pay for what he's done. We spent the rest of the day in full revenge mode, combing through the evidence we'd gathered and crafting a meticulous plan to expose Derek's misdeeds. Lena suggested hiring a private investigator to dig up even more dirt, but I balked at the idea of inviting a stranger into this personal hell. I can do it myself, I insisted, my jaw set with determination. I need to be the one to take him down, to show him that he messed with the wrong woman. Lena nodded, her eyes glinting with a fierce loyalty. Just be careful, Cor. Derek's a snake, but he's a smart one. Don't underestimate him. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from Derek. We need to talk. I'm coming over. I showed Lena the message, my lip curling in disgust. Speak of the devil. He probably wants to try and smooth things over, play the victim card. Don't let him, Lena warned. He'll twist everything around and make you doubt yourself. Stand your ground. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. Don't worry, I'm done falling for his lies. Half an hour later, Derek walked through the door, his expression a carefully crafted mask of contrition. Cora, baby, I'm so sorry, he started, reaching for me. I never meant to hurt you. I recoiled from his touch, crossing my arms defensively. Spare me the bullshit, Derek. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. His eyes flashed with irritation before he quickly smoothed his features back into a look of wounded sincerity. That's not true. I love you, Cora. What happened with Alexis? It was a mistake. A stupid, reckless mistake. A harsh laugh escaped my throat. A mistake? A year-long affair with your secretary is a mistake? Draining our savings account to buy her expensive gifts and fancy vacations is a mistake? His face paled as he realized the extent of what I knew. Have you been spying on me? I didn't have to, I spat. You weren't exactly subtle about it. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the mysterious charges on our credit card bill? The late nights at the office that never seemed to result in any actual work getting done? Derek dragged a hand over his face, his mask slipping to reveal a hint of the ugly anger lurking beneath. You're being irrational. It wasn't like that. Alexis and I, we have a connection. She understands me in a way you never could. White-hot rage surged through my veins. Don't you dare try to justify this. There is no excuse for what you've done. You betrayed me, our marriage, everything we built together. Oh, please, he scoffed. Our marriage has been a joke for years. You're always nagging me, always on my case about every little thing. It's exhausting. At least Alexis appreciates me. I reeled back as if he had slapped me, my heart shattering into a million jagged pieces. Get out, I whispered, my voice deadly calm. Get out of my house and don't come back. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. A flicker of fear crossed his face before it twisted into an ugly sneer. Fine. Have it your way, but don't think for a second that you're going to come out on top here. I'll bury you in court. As the door slammed behind him for the second time that day, I collapsed onto the couch, as my entire body shaking with a potent mix of heartbreak and fury. The gloves were off now. Derek wanted to play dirty? Fine, could play dirty too. And I'd make damn sure I was the one left standing when the dust settled. The next few days passed in a blur of secret phone calls, clandestine meetings, and careful strategizing. While Derek swanned around town with his mistress, flaunting their affair like a badge of honor, I quietly laid the groundwork for his downfall. My first unexpected ally came in the form of Elise, Derek's older sister. She showed up on my doorstep unannounced one evening, her face lined with concern. I heard about what happened, she said without preamble as I let her in. I'm so sorry, Cora. My brother is a fool. I blinked in surprise, thrown off balance by her blunt words. Elise and I had always had a cordial relationship, but we weren't particularly close. Thanks, I managed. That means a lot. She fixed me with a piercing stare, her eyes so like Derek's that it made my heart ache. I'm not here just to offer condolences. I want to help you nail the bastard to the wall. A startled laugh escaped my lips. I'm sorry, what? Elise leaned forward, her expression deadly serious. Derek has always been a selfish prick, even when we were kids. I've watched him charm and manipulate his way through life, never facing consequences for his actions. It's time that changed. Hope flared in my chest, bright and fierce. With Elise on my side, I stood a real chance of making Derek pay for his betrayal. What did you have in mind? A slow smile spread across her face. I have some ideas, but first, there are some things you should know about my dear brother's past indiscretions. Over the next hour, Elise laid out a trail of infidelities and deceptions that stretched back years. Affairs with coworkers, flings with clients, even a drunken hookup with a stripper at his bachelor party. Each revelation was like a knife to the gut, twisting deeper with every sordid detail. I had no idea, I whispered, numb with shock and disgust. How could I have been so blind? Elise reached out and squeezed my hand, her grip strong and reassuring. He's very good at hiding his tracks. But not good enough. Not anymore. Armed with this new information and Elise's support, I threw myself into plotting Derek's comeuppance with renewed vigor. Lena was thrilled to have another ally in our corner, especially one with insider knowledge. We need to hit him where it hurts, she declared as we pored over our growing dossier of evidence. His reputation, his career, his precious public image. Make it so he can't show his face in this town without being haunted by his own misdeeds. I nodded grimly, a cold determination settling over me like armor. And I know just how to do it. The plan began to take shape, as intricate and delicate as a spider's web. We would lay the trap at Derek's upcoming birthday party, a lavish affair he had planned to cement his status as a rising star at his law firm. In front of all his colleagues, friends, and family, we would expose his true colors in spectacular fashion. It was a risk, I knew. If we played our cards wrong, it could all blow up in our faces. But the thought of seeing the look on Derek's face when he realized he had been beaten at his own game was too tempting to resist. Late one night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Elise's parting words echoed in my mind. "He doesn't deserve you, Cora. He never did. It's time to show the world who you really are. A force to be reckoned with." I closed my eyes, picturing the moment of truth, the shock and outrage on Derek's face, the vindication of finally making him answer for his crimes. It was a long road ahead, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. "Watch out, Derek. Your reckoning is coming. And her name is Cora Bennett." The week leading up to Derek's birthday party was a whirlwind of covert operations and meticulous planning. Elise, Lena, and I met in secret, fine-tuning every detail of our grand scheme. We compiled a dossier of evidence that laid bare Derek's web of lies and infidelities, explicit text messages, incriminating photos, even a few damning voice recordings, courtesy of Elise's PI friend. It was a veritable treasure trove of betrayal, and I couldn't wait to unleash it on the unsuspecting partygoers. Lena took charge of the technical aspects, putting together a slideshow that would expose Derek's misdeeds in humiliating fashion. She even managed to hack into his email and uncover a trail of money transfers to a secret offshore account. "Bastard's been siphoning funds for months," she spat, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Probably planning to run off with his little side piece and leave you high and dry." Rage boiled in my veins, hot and corrosive. Not if I have anything to say about it. As the party drew near, I threw myself into the role of dutiful wife, helping Derek plan the celebration with a smile on my face and vengeance in my heart. He remained blissfully unaware of the storm gathering on the horizon, too caught up in his own ego to notice the danger signs. The night before the party, as we lay in bed, he reached for me with a lecherous grin. "How about a little pre-birthday surprise?" he purred, his hand sliding up my thigh. I fought back a shudder of revulsion and forced a coy smile. "Patience, baby. I've got something extra special planned for tomorrow night. Wouldn't want to ruin the surprise." His eyes gleamed with anticipation. "I like the sound of that. You know how much I love your surprises. If only you knew," I thought grimly. The day of the party dawned bright and clear, a perfect contrast to the dark storm brewing inside me. I went through the motions of getting ready, my mind buzzing with a heady mix of nerves and exhilaration. Lena and Elise arrived early to help with the final preparations, exchanging tense smiles and meaningful looks as we worked. The air crackled with a sense of impending chaos, like the calm before a hurricane. As the first guests began to arrive, I plastered on my most charming smile and played the role of gracious hostess to perfection. Derek held court by the bar, regaling his adoring audience with tales of his latest courtroom triumphs. I watched him work the room, all smooth charm and easy confidence, and felt a swell of vicious satisfaction. "Enjoy it while you can, you smug bastard. Your reign ends tonight." The party was in full swing when Elise caught my eye from across the room, giving me a subtle nod. It was time. I made my way to the front of the room, clinking my glass to get everyone's attention. "Can I have everyone's attention, please? I'd like to say a few words." A hush fell over the crowd as all eyes turned to me expectantly. Derek shot me a questioning look, but I ignored him, my gaze sweeping over the sea of faces. "First of all, I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate my wonderful husband," I began, my voice dripping with false sincerity. Derek is an incredible man, successful, charming, loved by all who know him. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room, and Derek preened under the praise, his chest puffing out with pride. I let the moment hang for a beat before my smile turned sharp and cutting. But there's another side to Derek that most of you don't know about, a side that lies, cheats, and betrays those closest to him without a second thought. Confusion flickered across Derek's face as I spoke, quickly morphing into anger as realization began to dawn. "Cora," he warned, his voice low and dangerous, "what the hell are you doing?" I ignored him, nodding to Lena, who stood poised by the projector. I think it's time everyone saw the real Derek Bennett. Roll the tape. The first slide flashed onto the screen behind me, and the room erupted into chaos. The projector hummed to life, casting a harsh light across the stunned faces of the partygoers. One by one, the damning slides flashed across the screen. Intimate photos of Derek and Alexis, screenshots of explicit text messages, bank statements detailing his secret transfers. Derek's face drained of color as he watched his dirty laundry being aired for all to see. His eyes darted wildly around the room, seeking an escape, but there was none to be found. "What the fuck is this?" he snarled, rounding on me with fury in his eyes. "You crazy bitch, turn it off!" I stood my ground, my chin lifted in defiance. "What's the matter, Derek? Afraid everyone will see what a lying, cheating scumbag you really are?" He lunged for me but was intercepted by Elise, who stepped smoothly into his path. "Ah, little brother, the show's not over yet." The final slide clicked into place, a giant red heart with the words, "Happy Birthday, Derek," scrawled across it in mocking cursive. The room fell silent for a beat, the tension stretching taut as a bowstring. Then the murmurs started, shocked whispers swelling to a dull roar as the truth sank in. Derek stood frozen, his fists clenched and his face twisted with impotent rage. "Derek, is this true?" A portly man in an expensive suit stepped forward, his brow furrowed in disapproval. I recognized him as Derek's boss, a senior partner at the law firm. Derek opened his mouth, a denial hot on his tongue, but the words died in his throat as he met the man's steely gaze. I can't explain," he stammered, but it was clear that no explanation would suffice. "I'm disappointed in you, Bennett." His boss said coldly, "I thought you were a man of integrity. It seems I was mistaken." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd as Derek's colleagues and clients turned their backs on him, their faces etched with disgust. He looked around wildly, searching for a friendly face, but found only condemnation. "Please, just let me explain," he begged, his voice cracking with desperation, but no one wanted to hear it. Alexis, who had been watching the scene unfold with a stricken expression, chose that moment to bolt for the door, her heels clattering on the hardwood floor. Derek called after her, but she didn't look back, vanishing into the night without a backward glance. And then it was just Derek, standing alone in the center of the room, the shattered remnants of his once charmed life scattered at his feet. I walked up to him slowly, my heels clicking on the floor like gunshots. He flinched as I drew near, shrinking away from the icy fury in my eyes. "How does it feel?" I asked softly, my voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "To have everything you've ever worked for, everything you've ever cared about, ripped away in an instant? To know that you've lost it all because of your own selfish, despicable actions?" "Cora, please," he whispered, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." A harsh laugh tore from my throat. "Spare me the crocodile tears, Derek. We both know you're only sorry you got caught." I leaned in close, my lips brushing his ear. "I loved you, you know. I would have done anything for you, but you threw it all away for a cheap thrill with your secretary, and now you're going to pay the price." He shuddered, a broken sob escaping his lips. "What are you going to do?" I smiled, cold and sharp as a knife's edge. "Oh, my dear husband, you have no idea what I'm capable of." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him to wallow in the ruins of his once perfect life. The trap had been sprung. The mighty Derek Bennett had fallen, and I had never felt more alive. The fallout from the party was swift and brutal. Within days, the news of Derek's disgrace had spread like wildfire through our social circles and beyond. Whispers followed him wherever he went, judgmental stares and scathing remarks dogging his every step. At work, the consequences were even more severe. His boss called him into his office the morning after the party, his face grim and his tone unforgiving. "I'm putting you on administrative leave, effective immediately," he said, sliding a sheaf of papers across the desk. "The firm can't afford to be associated with this kind of scandal. You're lucky I don't fire you outright." Derek's face paled as he reached for the papers with a trembling hand. "Sir, please. I can fix this. Just give me a chance to explain." His boss shook his head, his expression implacable. "There's nothing to explain, Bennett. Your actions speak for themselves. Take the leave, get your shit together, and pray that this blows over. but don't expect any favors from me or anyone else at this firm." Defeated, Derek slunk out of the office like a whipped dog, his tail tucked between his legs. I watched from the shadows, a thrill of vicious satisfaction coursing through my veins. That afternoon, Elise and Lena took me out to celebrate our victory. We clinked glasses of champagne, giddy with the rush of revenge fulfilled. "God, did you see his face?" Lena crowed, her eyes bright with malicious glee. "I thought he was going to piss himself right there on the floor." Elise laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Serves him right, the arrogant prick. I've been waiting years to see him get his comeuppance." I sipped my champagne, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue. "It's not over yet, ladies. There's still one more loose end to tie up." Their eyes met mine, alight with understanding. "The divorce," Elise said, her voice low and serious. "Are you ready for that fight?" I set my glass down, my smile sharp as a blade. I was born ready. He wants to play hardball? I'll bury him. That night, I sat Derek down and laid out my terms. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, his shoulders slumped and his eyes hollow. "I want a divorce," I said flatly, sliding a stack of papers across the table. "I've already had my lawyer draw up the paperwork. All you have to do is sign." He stared at the papers like they were a coiled snake, ready to strike. "Cora, please, can't we talk about this? I know I fucked up, but I can change. I can be better." I barked a harsh laugh. "Spare me the act, Derek. We both know you're not capable of change. You're a liar and a cheat, and that's all you'll ever be." He flinched as if I'd slapped him, his eyes welling with tears. "I love you, Cora. Doesn't that count for anything?" "You don't know the meaning of the word," I spat, my voice trembling with rage. "If you loved me, you never would have betrayed me the way you did. You never would have shattered our marriage like it meant nothing." He reached for me, but I recoiled, revulsion etched into every line of my face. "Don't touch me. Don't ever fucking touch me again." Sighing, he picked up the pen with a shaking hand. "Is this really what you want? To throw away everything we've built together?" I met his gaze, my eyes hard and unyielding. "You threw it away the moment you stuck your dick in another woman. I'm just finishing what you started." He signed the papers in silence, his shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. I watched him coldly, feeling nothing but a grim sense of satisfaction. It was done. The final nail in the coffin of our farce of a marriage. I was free. Free from his lies, his betrayals, his poisonous presence in my life, and I had never felt more alive. The divorce proceedings were a blur of legal jargon and bitter accusations, each side fighting tooth and nail for every scrap of assets and advantage. Derek, ever the sore loser, tried every dirty trick in the book to paint me as the villain, the unstable wife who drove him into another woman's arms. But I had truth on my side, and a crack team of lawyers who ate his pathetic arguments for breakfast. In the end, the judge saw through his lies and manipulation, granting me a generous settlement and the satisfaction of watching Derek slink out of the courtroom like a beaten dog. As I walked out of the courthouse, my head held high and my divorce papers clutched tightly in my hand, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. I was free. Lena was waiting for me on the steps, a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses in hand. "Congratulations, babe," she crowed, pulling me into a fierce hug. "You did it. You're officially a free woman." I laughed, my heart feeling lighter than it had in years. "Damn right I am, and I couldn't have done it without you and Elise. I owe you both everything." We popped the champagne, the bubbles fizzing over our hands as we poured 2 generous glasses. "To new beginnings," Lena said, clinking her glass against mine, "and to the power of women scorned." I grinned, taking a deep sip of the effervescent liquid. It tasted like victory, like vindication, like the start of a whole new chapter. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I found a new apartment, a sunny loft in the heart of downtown that felt like a haven after the oppressive gloom of the house I'd shared with Derek. I poured my energy into my work, taking on new clients and projects with a renewed sense of purpose. And slowly but surely, I started to heal. The pain of Derek's betrayal still stung, a dull ache that flared up in the quiet moments, but it no longer consumed me. I had survived, and I was stronger for it. One day, as I was leaving the office, I ran into Derek on the street. He looked haggard, his suit rumpled, and his eyes bloodshot. For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity for the broken man he had become. But then he opened his mouth, and any shred of sympathy I might have felt evaporated like mist in the sun. "Cora," he said, his voice rough and slurred. "I miss you. I made a mistake. Can't we just talk about this?" I stared at him incredulously, a harsh laugh bubbling up in my throat. "Are you serious right now? After everything you've done, you have the nerve to ask for another chance?" He reached for me, his eyes pleading. "I still love you, Cor. I know I fucked up, but we can fix this. We can start over." I slapped his hand away, my face twisting with disgust. "You don't get to call me that anymore. You don't get to pretend like we can just erase the past and start fresh. You made your choices, Derek. Now you have to live with them." I turned to walk away, but his next words stopped me in my tracks. "You ruined my life, you vindictive bitch. I hope you're happy now." Slowly, I pivoted back to face him, my eyes narrowed to icy slits. "I am happy, Derek. Happy to be rid of you and your toxic bullshit. Happy to finally be free of the lies and the cheating and the gaslighting. You didn't ruin my life, Derek. You just made me realize how strong I am without you." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, my head high and my heart full. I didn't look back. That night, Elise and Lena took me out to celebrate my new life. We clinked glasses of red wine and traded stories of triumph over adversity, of women who had risen from the ashes of betrayal to build something beautiful and strong. As I looked around at their smiling faces, I felt a surge of gratitude and love, so powerful it nearly took my breath away. These women, my sisters in arms, had been my rock through the darkest of times. With them by my side, I knew I could weather any storm. The future stretched out before me, bright and full of promise. I had no idea what it held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. Because I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I would face them with my head held high and my heart unbroken. I was Cora fucking Bennett, and I was unbreakable.
The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was reviewing marketing proposals for our biggest client when my phone lit up with Aunt Sylvia's number. My stomach dropped before I even answered. She never called this late. "Vienna, honey, it's your mother. You need to come home." I'm Vienna, and that call changed everything. Within 24 hours, I had packed up my life in Chicago, taken an indefinite leave from my position as marketing director, and moved back into my childhood home in Milwaukee to care for my mother, Hazel. The house smelled exactly the same. Lavender and old books. Mom always joked that she'd rather spend money on hardcovers than air fresheners. But now she lay in her bed upstairs, barely able to lift those beloved books. "I brought you some tea," I said, placing the mug on her nightstand. The cancer had eaten away at her so quickly that sometimes I hardly recognized her. Her once vibrant red hair had thinned to wisps, and her green eyes seemed to sink deeper into her face each day. "You shouldn't have left everything for me," she whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for the cup. "Your job, Blaze." "Mom, stop. The job will wait. And Blaze understands." I didn't mention that my fiancé's understanding had come with an ultimatum. "Don't expect me to wait forever." 3 months later, he'd stopped calling. "I need to tell you something," Mom said, her voice urgent. "About the past." A coughing fit seized her before she could finish. I held her shoulders as she shook, watching helplessly as she gasped for air. When it finally passed, she fell back against the pillows, exhausted. "Rest now," I said, smoothing her hair. "We can talk later." That night, I sat in the kitchen, surrounded by medical bills and insurance paperwork. The house creaked with familiar sounds, the furnace kicking on, the grandfather clock in the hall marking midnight. I used to find these noises comforting. Now they felt like ghosts of happier times. My phone buzzed with a text from Jordan, my best friend since 3rd grade. "How's she doing? Need me to bring dinner tomorrow?" "Thanks, but I'm okay," I typed back, just trying to figure out how long I can stretch my savings. I hadn't told anyone that I'd already drained my 401k. Mom's treatment costs were astronomical, and her insurance barely covered half. But she'd given me everything growing up, working 2 jobs after Dad left, never missing a dance recital or parent-teacher conference. This was the least I could do. A sound from upstairs made me freeze. Mom was talking in her sleep again, something she'd started doing recently. "I'm sorry," she mumbled as I approached her bed. "I'm so sorry, Vienna. Braden. I should have." I leaned closer, but the rest was unintelligible. Who was Braden? Another mystery to add to the growing list of things that didn't make sense lately. The next morning, I found her staring at an old photo album. "Remember this?" she asked, pointing to a picture of us at the lake house. I was maybe 7, gap-toothed and sunburned, proudly holding up a fishing rod. "Dad took that, didn't he? Right before he left." She closed the album abruptly. "Some memories are better left in the past, sweetheart." "Mom, what aren't you telling me?" "Last night you mentioned someone named Braden." "I need my medication," she interrupted, hands shaking as she reached for the pill organizer. I helped her with the pills, but something felt off. The way she avoided my eyes, how quickly she changed the subject. It was like watching a door slowly close, one I hadn't even known was open. Later that day, Aunt Sylvia stopped by with groceries. I caught her and Mom whispering in the bedroom, their conversation stopping abruptly when I entered. "Just discussing old times," Aunt Sylvia said, too brightly. "You know how we get," but I saw the tear tracks on Mom's cheeks, the way her hands clutched a piece of paper that disappeared under her pillow as soon as I walked in. That night, as I lay in my old bedroom staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck on the ceiling at 13, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something huge. Mom's mysterious apologies, the name Braden, the secretive conversations with Aunt Sylvia. It all pointed to something hidden, something that made my chest tight with anxiety. I pulled out my phone and opened Google, fingers hovering over the keyboard. What exactly was I looking for? What questions should I even be asking? And more importantly, with Mom's health declining so rapidly, did I really want to know the answers? The grandfather clock struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the quiet house. Somewhere down the hall, Mom started talking in her sleep again, her words too faint to make out, but heavy with what sounded like regret. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm of doctor's appointments, medication schedules, and sleepless nights. I learned to measure time not by hours, but by Mom's good days and bad days. "Your mother's declining faster than we anticipated," Dr. Roberts said during one of our weekly visits. "You might want to start making arrangements." I gripped the edge of his desk. How long? Weeks, maybe days. That evening, I found Mom sorting through her jewelry box, her fingers trembling as she picked through old necklaces and rings. "Come here, sweetheart." She patted the bed beside her. "I want you to have my sapphire pendant. Your father gave it to me when—" She stopped abruptly, frowning at a small key buried beneath the jewelry. "What's that for?" I asked. She closed her hand around it. "Nothing important, just an old safety deposit box." But her voice shook, and I caught that familiar flash of guilt in her eyes. "Mom, please, whatever you're hiding." "Vienna," she cut me off, suddenly looking more alert than she had in weeks. "There are things you don't understand, things I've done. I only wanted to protect you." Before I could press further, she started coughing violently. I reached for her water glass, but she waved it away, struggling to catch her breath. Then her eyes went wide, and she clutched her chest. "Mom? Mom!" The next hours passed in a blur of ambulance sirens, hospital corridors, and doctors speaking in hushed tones. By sunrise, I was sitting alone in a plastic chair, staring at my mother's empty bed, while a nurse explained something about death certificates and funeral homes. Aunt Sylvia arrived first, wrapping me in a hug that smelled of cigarettes and vanilla. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Jordan came next, bringing coffee and staying silent. She always knew when words weren't enough. My boss, Simone, sent flowers with a note, promising my job would be waiting whenever I was ready. The funeral was small, just how Mom would have wanted it. I stood between Aunt Sylvia and Jordan as they lowered the casket, feeling hollow and numb. But it wasn't until the will reading 3 days later that my world truly fell apart. Otis, Mom's lawyer, met me in his downtown office. The room felt too warm, and his bow tie was slightly crooked. Details my brain fixated on as he shuffled through papers. "Before we begin," he said, adjusting his glasses, "your mother wanted me to give you this." He handed me an envelope with my name written in Mom's elegant script. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Vienna, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I know you'll have questions, so many questions. The truth is, I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes that I've spent years trying to make right. Please try to understand that everything I did was to protect both you and Braden. Yes, Braden, your brother. Otis will explain everything. I'm so sorry for the pain this will cause you. Know that I love you more than life itself, even if my actions don't show it. Mom." I looked up at Otis, my vision blurring. "Brother? What brother?" He cleared his throat. "Braden Kelly, your mother's son from an affair she had 30 years ago, and the sole beneficiary of her estate." The room tilted sideways. "What? The house, her savings, everything goes to Braden. She was very specific about this in her will. But I'm her daughter." I stood up so quickly my chair toppled backward. "I gave up everything to care for her, and you're telling me she left everything to some secret love child I've never even met?" "There's more," Otis said quietly. "Braden doesn't know about any of this. He doesn't even know Hazel was his mother." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that didn't seem like it could have come from me. "So she not only cut me out of the will, but left everything to someone who doesn't even know she existed. This has to be a joke. Your mother had her reasons." "Her reasons?" I snatched up my purse. "Her reasons for lying to me my entire life. For watching me drain my savings to care for her while she had a secret son and a secret will." "Vienna, please sit down. There are things you need to know." But I was already heading for the door. Mom's letter crumpled in my fist. Behind me, I heard Otis call out something about legal proceedings and contact information. But his words were drowned out by the roaring in my ears. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and pulled out my phone. With trembling fingers, I typed Braden Kelly into Facebook. The first result showed a man about my age, with Mom's green eyes and familiar smile, teaching in a classroom. My brother, my secret brother, who had just inherited everything I'd spent my life working for. Well, Mom wanted him to have it all? Fine. But first, he was going to learn exactly what kind of woman our mother really was. I spent the next week in a fog of rage and betrayal, ignoring calls from Aunt Sylvia and dodging Jordan's attempts to check on me. The house felt like a museum of lies. Every photo, every memento now suspect. I couldn't look at anything without wondering what other secrets it held. My phone buzzed again. "Jordan." For the third time today. Finally, I answered. "You can't hide forever," she said, before I could speak. "I'm coming over with wine." An hour later, we sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom, surrounded by boxes I'd started packing. "I just can't believe she'd do this," I said, taking another swig straight from the bottle. 30 years of lies. And now some stranger gets everything. Jordan picked up a framed photo from one of the boxes. "Have you looked him up?" "Braden." I pulled out my phone, showing her his Facebook profile. "He's a high school English teacher in Madison. Married, no kids. Looks like he volunteers at animal shelters on weekends. He's basically perfect. And he has no idea. None." I grabbed another box, this one full of Mom's old papers, but he's about to find out. "Vienna." Jordan's voice held a warning. "What are you planning?" Before I could answer, something fell from the box, an old leather-bound journal, Mom's diary. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Oh my God," I whispered, scanning the pages. She wrote about him, about everything. The entries dated back to 1993, describing her affair with Thomas, Braden's father. How she discovered she was pregnant, how she gave birth in secret, and arranged for Thomas's sister to raise the baby. "Listen to this," I read aloud. "I watch him sometimes, at the park, with his aunt. He has Thomas's laugh, my eyes. Vienna would love having a brother, but I can't risk destroying everything. Better they never know. Jordan touched my arm. Maybe she was trying to protect you both. Protect us? I slammed the diary shut. She lied to us our entire lives. And then my voice broke. She made me think I was all she had. Watched me sacrifice everything to care for her, knowing she was planning to leave it all to him. So what now? You're going to track him down and tell him everything? Not yet. I pulled out my laptop. First, I need to understand why. Mom mentioned a safety deposit box key before she died. I'm going to find it and see what else she was hiding. The next morning, I drove to Aunt Sylvia's house. She opened the door before I could knock, looking unsurprised. I wondered when you'd come, she said, stepping aside to let me in. Otis called me after the will reading. Her living room was cluttered with family photos, including several I'd never seen before. One caught my eye, Mom at what looked like a school graduation, standing far in the background. That's Braden's high school graduation, Aunt Sylvia said quietly. Your mother went to every important event in his life, always keeping her distance. You knew? I spun to face her. All this time? She sank into her armchair, suddenly looking older. I helped her arrange everything with Thomas's sister. It was different back then, Vienna. A married woman having an affair, a secret child. It would have ruined all of you. So you helped her lie for 30 years. I helped her protect her family. Both her families. She reached for her purse, pulling out a small key. She gave me this last month. Said you'd come looking for it eventually. The safety deposit box key. I grabbed it, my hand shaking. What else do you know? Only that whatever's in that box changed everything for her. It's why she rewrote her will. She caught my arm as I turned to leave. Vienna, wait. Your mother loved you more than anything. Whatever you're planning. You don't get to talk to me about love. I pulled away. Not after 30 years of lies. Back in my car, I studied the key. The tag showed it was from First National Bank downtown. Tomorrow, I'd find out what was in that box. Tomorrow, I'd understand why my mother betrayed me. My phone lit up with a Facebook notification. Braden had posted a photo of himself with his students, all smiling after winning some literary competition. He looked so much like Mom, it hurt. Enjoy your perfect life while you can, brother, I muttered, starting the car, because once I open that safety deposit box, everything changes. What I didn't know then was just how right I was, but not in the way I expected. The contents of that box wouldn't just change Braden's life. They would shatter everything I thought I knew about my mother, my family, and myself. The safety deposit box contained exactly 3 items: a stack of letters, a USB drive, and a handwritten note addressed to me. My hands shook as I read it in the bank's private viewing room. Vienna, if you're reading this, you've discovered the truth about Braden. Before you do anything, please watch the video on the drive. And remember, sometimes the greatest acts of love look like betrayal from the outside. I plugged the USB drive into my laptop right there. Mom's face filled the screen, recorded just weeks before her death. She looked tired but determined. My darling girl, she began. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But there's something you need to understand about Braden, about why I made the choices I did. I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't watch this, not yet. Instead, I grabbed the letters and left, driving straight to the address I'd memorized from Braden's Facebook profile. Madison West High School looked exactly like the photos online. I sat in my car, watching students filter out after the final bell. Then I saw him, tall, with Mom's green eyes and easy smile, locking up his classroom. Before I could lose my nerve, I got out of the car. Braden. He turned, friendly but confused. Yes, can I help you? I'm Vienna. My voice cracked. Hazel was my mother. His expression didn't change. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Who's Hazel? Your mother. Our mother. He stepped back, shaking his head. There must be some mistake. My mother was Sarah Kelly. She died when I was young. Sarah was your aunt. She raised you because Hazel couldn't keep you. I thrust the letters at him. Here's proof. His hands trembled as he took them. This is insane. I can't. I need to sit down. We ended up at a coffee shop across the street. Braden read through the letters while I watched his world unravel, just like mine had. These are from my mother, Sarah, to someone named Hazel, he said finally. They're about me. My childhood. Mom made Sarah promise to write to her every month, to send pictures, report cards, everything. He looked up sharply. Why are you here? Why now? Because Mom died 3 weeks ago, and she left everything to you. What? He pushed the letters away. That's ridiculous. I never even met her. But she met you. She was at your graduation, your college acceptance ceremony, your wedding. Always watching from a distance, I pulled out my phone, showing him the photo from Aunt Sylvia's house. See? His face went pale. I remember her. She was always around, just watching. I thought she was one of the other parents. He ran a hand through his hair. This is too much. I have a family, a life. I can't just. Neither could I cut in. But Mom made sure we didn't have a choice. She left you everything, the house, her savings, all of it. And you want to know the best part? I spent the last year caring for her, draining my savings, losing my fiancé, while she knew all along she was leaving everything to you. I don't want any of it, he said quickly. Keep it. I never asked for this. Neither did I. Several people turned to stare at my outburst. I lowered my voice. Neither did I. But here we are. Braden studied me for a long moment. There's more to this story. There has to be. The woman in these letters, she loved both of us. She wouldn't have done this without a reason. I thought of the video on the USB drive, still unwatched, maybe, but does it matter? The damage is done. It matters to me. He gathered the letters carefully. Look, I teach until 3 every day. If you want, come back tomorrow. We can go through these together, try to understand. I almost said no. This wasn't how my confrontation was supposed to go. He was supposed to be arrogant, entitled, not this thoughtful man who looked so much like Mom. It hurt. Fine, I heard myself say. Tomorrow. As I drove home, my phone rang. Aunt Sylvia, did you meet him? She asked without preamble. How did you? Because I know you, Vienna. Just like your mother did. Did you watch the video yet? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. No. You should. Before you go back tomorrow. How did you know I'm going back? She chuckled softly. Because you're your mother's daughter. And she never could leave a mystery unsolved either. I hung up, but her words followed me home. That night, I sat staring at the USB drive, wondering what other secrets Mom had left behind. Tomorrow, I'd see Braden again. Tomorrow, we'd start unraveling the truth together. But first, I had a video to watch. I watched Mom's video 3 times that night. Each viewing revealed new layers of pain, love, and sacrifice I hadn't understood before. Your father was a cruel man, Vienna, Mom said in the recording. When I met Thomas, Braden's father, it was like finding air after drowning. But Thomas died in a car accident before I could tell him about the baby. Your father's threats about taking you away if I ever shamed him. I couldn't risk losing you both. The next morning, I arrived at Madison West High School, just as Braden was finishing his class. Through the window, I watched him joking with students, his gestures mirroring Mom's so perfectly, it made my chest ache. Ready? He asked when he saw me. I know a quiet place where we can talk. We settled in a small park nearby, spreading the letters between us on a picnic table. I found something else last night, I said, pulling out an envelope. Photos Mom kept hidden. Look at this one. The photograph showed Mom holding baby Braden in a hospital room, tears streaming down her face. On the back was written, "My son, my secret, my heart, 1993. She loved you," I said quietly. That's clear in everything I've found. Braden touched the photo gently. Then why give me up? Why never tell me? Because of my father. Watch this. I played him part of Mom's video on my phone. His face darkened as he listened to Mom describe my father's abuse, his threats, the impossible choice she faced. She protected you from him, he said when it ended. Both of us, really. But why leave everything to you now? Why put me through caring for her just to Vienna? Aunt Sylvia's voice cut through the park. She hurried toward us, clutching her purse. Thank God I found you both. How did you know we'd be here? Jordan told me. She sat down, heavily, out of breath. There's something you need to know. Something your mother made me promise to tell you both when the time was right. She pulled out a thick envelope. Your mother didn't just leave everything to Braden. She left it to both of you, together. What? I grabbed the envelope, scanning the documents inside. But Otis told you what your mother instructed him to say. She knew you, Vienna, knew you'd need to understand the whole story before you could accept sharing your inheritance. And she knew you'd need to meet Braden, to see the kind of man he became. So this was all some elaborate setup? I felt my anger rising again. Another manipulation. No, Braden said suddenly. It was a gift. He pointed to one of the letters we'd been reading. Look at the date. She wrote this the day after my wedding, when she watched from afar. My greatest regret is that my children will never know each other, never understand the love that kept them apart, was the same love that could bring them together. Aunt Sylvia nodded. She spent 30 years protecting you both from your father's cruelty. But in the end, she wanted to give you what she never could before, each other. I stared at the inheritance papers, the house, the savings. Everything was to be shared equally. But only if Braden and I could work together to settle the estate. There's more, Aunt Sylvia said. Your mother left letters for both of you, explaining everything. But she was clear, you have to read them together. She handed us each an envelope, then stood. I'll leave you to it. But remember, your mother's greatest wish was for her children to find in each other what she could never give you herself, the truth, and a chance at real family. As she walked away, Braden and I sat in silence, holding our unopened letters. Well, he said finally, should we read them? I looked at him, this stranger who was my brother, this man who shared my mother's eyes and my own sense of loss. Together, he nodded. Together, we opened our letters simultaneously. Mom's familiar handwriting filled the pages, but these weren't just explanations or apologies. They were stories, stories of our childhoods, parallel lives she'd watched over, moments she'd treasured from afar. And at the end of each letter was the same message. The inheritance isn't about money. It's about healing. It's about taking the broken pieces of our family and building something new, something honest, something yours. I looked up to find Braden watching me, his eyes, our mother's eyes, filled with tears. So, he said softly, what do we do now? The answer came easier than I expected. We start over. We learn to be siblings. We figure out what family means without the secrets. He smiled. Mom's smile. I'd like that. As the sun set over the park, we began to read the letters again, this time sharing the stories aloud, piecing together the fragments of our shared history, and starting to understand the complex love that had both divided and united us. Over the next few weeks, Braden and I fell into a strange routine of sorting through Mom's belongings together every weekend. Each item we uncovered felt like another piece of a puzzle we were slowly assembling. Look at this, Braden called from the attic, holding up a dusty photo album. It's full of newspaper clippings. I climbed up beside him, shining my flashlight on the yellowed pages. Every academic award, every teaching achievement, every community service mention with Braden's name had been carefully preserved. She really did follow my whole life, he whispered. Even my first teaching job announcement. She was proud of you. I pulled out another box, just like she was proud of. I stopped, staring at what I'd found. What is it? I lifted out a familiar blue dress. I wore this to my college graduation. She said she had it specially made. My fingers traced the intricate beadwork. But look at this. Hidden in the folds was a receipt from a vintage shop, dated 1993. The dress had originally belonged to Sarah, Braden's aunt who raised him. Sarah wore this to her graduation, Braden said, recognition dawning. I've seen photos, Mom, Hazel. She wanted you to have a piece of both families, didn't she? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Jordan. You need to come to the diner, she said, without preamble. Your aunt's here, and she's ready to tell you everything. 20 minutes later, Braden and I sat across from Aunt Sylvia in a booth at Jerry's diner. She looked tired, clutching her coffee cup like a lifeline. I should have told you this years ago, she began. Your father, Vienna, he didn't just threaten to take you away. He threatened to destroy everyone involved if the truth about Braden ever came out. What do you mean? Braden leaned forward. He was a powerful man in town. Banking, real estate. He could ruin lives with a phone call. When he found out about your mother's pregnancy, he gave her an ultimatum. Give up the baby or lose everything, including Vienna. But why keep it secret all these years? I asked. He died 10 years ago. Sylvia pulled out an old envelope. Because of this, your father's last act of cruelty. Inside was a legal document, a codicil to his will, stating that if Hazel ever acknowledged Braden or tried to give him any family assets, everything would go to a conservative religious organization instead. She fought it for years, Sylvia continued. Hired lawyers in secret, tried to find loopholes. That's why she waited until now, structured the inheritance the way she did. She found a way to give you both everything without triggering your father's claws. By making us work together, Braden said slowly. By forcing us to become family first. The waitress arrived with more coffee, giving me a moment to process. All these years, I'd thought Mom's secrets were about shame or guilt. But they were about protection, not just of Braden, but of everything she'd built for both of us. There's something else, Sylvia said, reaching into her purse. Your mother left this with me. Said to give it to you when you were ready to understand. She handed me a small leather journal. Inside, Mom's handwriting filled every page with letters. Letters to both of us, written every year on our birthdays, never sent. Dear Vienna and Braden, I read aloud from the first page. Today, Vienna lost her first tooth, and Braden won his first spelling bee. I wish more than anything I could celebrate these moments together, as a family. Keep reading, Sylvia urged gently. One day, when the truth can finally come out, I hope you'll both understand that love sometimes means making impossible choices. But I've watched you both grow into such remarkable people. Vienna with her fierce loyalty and determination. Braden with his gentle heart and quiet strength. You're so different, yet so alike. You're both fighters, both dreamers, both mine. Braden wiped his eyes. All those years, she was writing to us both. She never stopped hoping you'd find each other, Sylvia said. That you'd build the family she couldn't give you. I looked at Braden, my brother, no longer a stranger, and saw Mom's hope reflected in his eyes. We'd started this journey seeking answers, maybe even revenge. Instead, we'd found something far more valuable, the truth about our mother's love, and the chance to become the family she'd always dreamed we'd be. So, Braden said, reaching for the journal, shall we read the rest together? I nodded, feeling the last of my anger dissolve into understanding. Together, we need to talk about the house, Braden said one Saturday morning, as we sorted through Mom's kitchen. 2 months had passed since we'd learned the full truth, and we'd settled into an unexpected friendship. What about it? I asked, labeling another box of dishes. I think you should keep it. He held up his hand as I started to protest. Hear me out. This is your home. You grew up here. And honestly, I have my own place in Madison. But the inheritance, we can figure something else out. Split the savings maybe? He smiled, picking up one of Mom's old coffee mugs. Besides, Sarah, my aunt, she left me her house. Seems fair you should have this one. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. It was Otis, looking uncomfortable in the weekend casual wear that didn't suit him. We need to discuss something, he said, clutching his briefcase. About the will. My stomach dropped as we sat in the living room. What's wrong? There's been a challenge. Otis pulled out some papers. Your father's old associates at the religious organization. They're claiming the inheritance violates the terms of his codicil. But Mom found a way around that, I protested. They're arguing that any acknowledgement of Braden as family triggers the clause. They want everything. The house, the savings, all of it. Braden stood up suddenly. This is ridiculous. They can't just. They can try, Otis interrupted. And they have the resources for a lengthy legal battle. I felt the old anger rising. Even from the grave, my father was trying to control us, to keep us apart. So what do? I asked. Fight back, came a voice from the doorway. Aunt Sylvia stood there with Jordan, both carrying thick folders. We've been doing some digging. They spread the contents across the coffee table. Bank statements, old letters, legal documents. Your father wasn't as clever as he thought, Jordan explained. He left a paper trail. Look at these donations to the organization. All made under false names, all traced back to money he embezzled from his clients. And here, Sylvia pointed to some letters, proof that he blackmailed the organization's board members to agree to his terms. The whole codicil was built on fraud. Otis adjusted his glasses, examining the documents. This changes everything. With evidence of fraud, we can have the codicil invalidated entirely. But it's not that simple, is it? Braden asked quietly. No, Otis admitted. Going to court means making everything public. Your mother's affair, the adoption, all of it. I looked at Braden, seeing my own conflict reflected in his face. We'd just started to heal, to build something real. Did we want to drag everything into the open? I have an idea, I said slowly. What if we don't fight it? Vienna, Sylvia started. No, listen. What if we donate everything, not to their organization, but to causes Mom believed in? Education programs, cancer research, adoption support services. Braden's face lit up. We could set up a foundation in her name. Use the money to help other families torn apart by circumstances beyond their control. Can we do that? I asked Otis. He was already flipping through his papers. Actually, yes. If you both agree to donate the assets voluntarily, the codicil becomes irrelevant. They can't challenge what you've already given away. It's perfect, Jordan said. Your father wanted to use the money to divide people. You'll use it to bring them together instead. I looked around the room, at Braden, my brother who'd become my friend, at Sylvia and Jordan, who'd helped uncover the truth, at Otis, who'd kept Mom's secrets until the right time. Mom's last letter said the inheritance wasn't about money, I said. It was about healing, about building something new. Braden nodded. So we'll build something that helps others heal too. Your mother would be proud, Sylvia whispered, wiping her eyes. Later that evening, Braden and I sat on the porch steps, watching the sunset just like Mom used to do. You know what's funny, he said. When you first showed up at my classroom, I thought my life was about to fall apart. Instead, it finally feels complete. I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the truth of his words. Mom knew what she was doing, didn't she? Making us work together, forcing us to understand each other before we could understand her. She gave us the greatest inheritance possible, he agreed. She gave us each other. As the sky turned purple and gold, I thought about how far we'd come from that day in Otis's office when I'd wanted revenge. Mom had known all along what I'd eventually learn, that the real power wasn't in getting even, but in rising above, in building something beautiful from the ashes of the past. Ready? Braden asked, adjusting his tie as we stood outside the community center. Almost. I smoothed the wrinkles from the blue vintage dress, Sarah's dress, Mom's gift, that I'd chosen to wear today, just nervous. Through the windows, I could see the crowd gathering for the launch of the Hazel Foundation. Local press, community leaders, and families who would benefit from our programs filled the seats. They're ready for you, Jordan said, poking her head out. Full house. Braden squeezed my hand as we walked to the podium. The familiar faces in the audience gave me strength. Aunt Sylvia in the front row, Otis with his slightly crooked bow tie, even my old boss, Simone, who'd helped develop our outreach strategy. Welcome, I began, my voice steady. Many of you knew our mother, Hazel, as a quiet woman who loved books and kept to herself. What you didn't know was that she spent 30 years protecting a secret that would ultimately bring her children together. Braden stepped forward. We're here today not just to launch a foundation, but to share a story about love, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. As we took turns explaining the foundation's mission, supporting families separated by circumstances, funding education initiatives, and providing legal aid to parents fighting to keep their children, I watched the audience's reactions. There were tears, nods of understanding, and moments of surprised recognition as people pieced together the truth about Mom's past. Every dollar that could have torn us apart, Braden said, will now help bring other families together. After the presentation, during the reception, a young woman approached us clutching a pamphlet. My sister and I, she hesitated. We were separated in foster care 15 years ago. Your legal aid program, could it really help us reconnect? That's exactly what it's for, I smiled, thinking of Mom. Sometimes families just need a second chance to find each other. Later, as we packed up the remaining materials, Aunt Sylvia handed me an envelope. Found this in your mother's old recipe box this morning, she said. It's addressed to both of you, dated the day before she died. Braden and I sat in the empty auditorium to read it together. My dearest children, by now you've discovered not just each other, but the truth about why I kept you apart. What you might not understand is that every day of separation was also a day of preparation, preparing you both to be strong enough, wise enough, and loving enough to heal our broken family when the time came. Vienna, your fierce loyalty and determination helped you care for me until the end, even when it cost you everything. Braden, your compassionate heart and gentle spirit made you the kind of teacher who changes lives. Together, you possess everything needed to turn our family's pain into purpose. I'm leaving you my greatest burden, but also my greatest hope. The money, the house, they're just things. The real inheritance is the chance to right my wrongs, to help other families avoid our fate, and to become the siblings you were always meant to be. I love you both, eternally and completely, Mom. She knew, Braden said softly. She knew we'd choose this path. Of course she did. I looked around the auditorium, imagining the families we'd help, the lives we'd change. She taught us how, even if we didn't realize it at the time. Ms. Vienna, the young woman from earlier, stood in the doorway with her sister, newly reunited through our program's preliminary outreach. We just wanted to say thank you for everything. Watching them leave, arms linked, I felt Mom's presence stronger than ever. She'd transformed her greatest regret into our greatest purpose, her deepest wounds into our strongest bonds. Hey, Braden nudged my shoulder. Want to grab coffee? I found Mom's old journal entries about your 8th grade dance recital disaster. Figure it's time I heard that story. I laughed, linking my arm through his. Only if you tell me about the time you accidentally set fire to your aunt's kitchen trying to make breakfast in bed. As we walked out together, I caught our reflection in the window. Mom's eyes, her smile, her determination mirrored in both our faces. We'd started this journey as strangers united by betrayal, but we'd ended it as siblings, united by understanding, forgiveness, and a shared mission to help others find what we'd found. The truth that family isn't just about blood or inheritance, but about the choices we make and the love we choose to give. Behind us, the foundation's new logo glowed softly. A simple heart formed by 2 intertwined hands, with Mom's favorite quote beneath it, "Love finds a way." And she'd been right. It had.
I stared at the acceptance letter one last time, my fingers trembling as I traced the embossed letterhead of the prestigious Italian architecture program. The paper felt heavy, like it carried the weight of all my dreams. My name, Emma, looked beautiful printed there, followed by words that should have changed my life. "We are pleased to accept you." "Emma, get down here now!" Mom's voice shattered my moment. I knew that tone. It meant Truman needed something again. I tucked the letter into my desk drawer, buried beneath a stack of sketches and designs. It would stay there, collecting dust, just like my dreams. "Coming!" I called back, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The scene in our living room was familiar. Mom and Dad on the couch, Truman pacing anxiously, his perfect hair slightly disheveled, a sure sign he was about to ask for something big. "Sit down, honey," Dad said, using his gentle voice. The one that always preceded bad news or impossible requests. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. There was only one reason they'd gather like this on a Sunday afternoon. Truman cleared his throat. "So, Tiffany and I set a date for the wedding." "That's great?" I tried to sound enthusiastic, but my stomach was already nodding. "It's at the Grand Plaza," Mom beamed. "Isn't that wonderful?" "The Grand Plaza." "Of course. Only the most expensive venue in town would do for Golden Boy Truman and his Instagram-famous fiancée. The thing is," Truman ran his hands through his hair, "we're a bit short on the deposit, and I know you've been saving up for whatever it was." "Architecture school in Italy," I said firmly. "I've been saving for 3 years." "Right, that." He waved his hand dismissively. "But this is my wedding, Em. The most important day of my life." Mom leaned forward. "Emma, sweetie, you can always study later. Truman needs this now. The deposit is due tomorrow, and they won't hold the date." "Later?" I laughed, but it came out more like a choke. "I'm 28. When exactly is later?" "Don't be dramatic," Dad sighed. "Family comes first. You know that." My best friend Audrey's words from last week echoed in my head. They treat you like an ATM with legs, and you let them. "How much?" I asked, my voice hollow. Truman named a figure that made my heart stop. It was almost everything I had saved. "That's insane!" I protested. "That's my future you're asking for." "Emma," Mom's voice turned sharp, "your brother has found someone special. Are you really going to stand in the way of his happiness?" I looked at Truman, remembering all the times I'd given in. The car repair money last year, the business venture the year before that. Every time it was, "just this once," and "I'll pay you back." "You never paid me back for the car," I said quietly. "Oh my God, are you seriously bringing that up now?" Truman exploded. "This is my wedding." "And what about my life?" I shot back. "When does what I want matter?" The silence that followed was deafening. Mom looked like I'd slapped her. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. And Truman just stared at me with that entitled expectation I'd grown to hate. "Fine," I finally said, standing up. "I'll transfer the money tomorrow." "Emma, thank you!" Truman rushed to hug me, but I stepped back. "Don't." My voice cracked. "Just don't." I turned and walked upstairs, ignoring Mom's calls behind me. Back in my room, I pulled out the acceptance letter again. This time, I didn't just look at it. I read it aloud, every word, committing it to memory. Then I took out my phone and texted Audrey. "You were right. They did it again." And I let them. Her response came quickly. "Oh, honey, want me to come over?" "No, I need to be alone right now." I sat at my desk, looking at the architectural sketches covering my walls. Dreams drawn in careful lines and precise measurements. Tomorrow, I would transfer my savings to Truman's account. Tomorrow, I would watch another piece of myself slip away. But something else was happening too. Something new and uncomfortable and terrifying. As I sat there, surrounded by the ghosts of my ambitions, I felt a spark of anger ignite. Not the usual resigned frustration, but something fiercer. Something that whispered, "This is the last time." I just didn't know then how right that whisper would be, or how much everything would change in just 1 year. 1 year can change everything. I was grading student projects at my desk in the community college when Audrey burst into my classroom, waving her phone like it contained state secrets. "Have you seen Instagram today?" she asked, breathless. I shook my head, red pen hovering over a particularly creative but structurally impossible design. Some of us have to work for a living, Odd. Well, your darling sister-in-law just posted quite the show. She perched on my desk, shoving her phone in my face. Look! There was Tiffany, my brother's wife, draped across some guy who definitely wasn't Truman. The caption read, "Living my best life. New chapter G-stroke freedom." Wow, I said, trying to summon some surprise but finding none. That didn't take long. That's all you have to say? Your brother's marriage is imploding after what, 10 months? I set down my pen and leaned back. You mean the marriage that cost me my dream school? The one with the ridiculous horse-drawn carriage and diamond-encrusted centerpieces? That marriage? Okay, point taken. Audrey hopped off my desk. Want to grab dinner? We can trash-talk them both over wine. Can't. I have to finish these grades and prep for tomorrow's lecture on sustainable urban development. I gestured to the stack of papers. Living the dream, right? Joe, Emma, Audrey's voice softened. You're allowed to be bitter about this. I'm not bitter, I lied. I'm teaching architecture to community college students instead of studying in Italy. It's fine. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Call your brother. He needs you. Of course he does, I muttered, showing Audrey the message. Don't you dare, she warned. You've given him enough. Before I could respond, my classroom door creaked open again. This time it was Jarvis, another friend and fellow teacher. Hey, Em, your brother's in the parking lot, he said, looking concerned. He seems pretty messed up. I checked my watch, 9:45 p.m. What's he doing here this late? Based on how he's swaying, I'd say drinking, Jarvis replied. Perfect. I gathered my things, suddenly very tired. Guess I'm dealing with this now. Want backup? Audrey offered. No, I got this. It's what I do, right? Fix Truman's messes? The parking lot was dark, except for a few security lights. Truman's silhouette was easy to spot, leaning against my car. His usually immaculate appearance was gone, replaced by wrinkled clothes and messy hair. Hey, sis, he slurred. Remember when we were kids and you'd always protect me? What do you want, Truman? He stumbled forward. Tiffany's leaving me. She cleaned out our accounts. I saw the Instagram post. Instagram? He laughed bitterly. No, this is worse. She didn't just cheat, she took everything. The money, the house down payment, even my car. I crossed my arms. And? He looked shocked. Emma, I need help. I need somewhere to stay. Maybe a loan to get back on my feet. No. The word hung between us, sharp and final. What do you mean, no? His voice rose. I'm your brother. Yeah, and I'm your sister. The same sister who gave up studying in Italy for your wedding. The same sister who's been bailing you out since we were kids. My voice was steady, surprising even me. But not anymore. Mom and Dad will... Let them. I cut him off. I'm done being the family ATM. He staggered closer, grabbing my arm. Please, Em, I've got nowhere else to go. I pulled away. There's a motel down the street. Or call Mom and Dad. I'm sure they'll take you in. But I can't help you anymore, Truman. I won't. You're just going to leave me here? His voice cracked. Like you left me with empty dreams and a drained bank account? I unlocked my car. Yeah, I am. As I drove away, I watched him in my rearview mirror, standing alone in the parking lot. Part of me wanted to turn around, the same part that had always given in, always put him first, but something had changed in the past year. Maybe it was teaching young students about following their dreams while mine gathered dust. Maybe it was watching Tiffany's endless social media posts about their perfect life, bought with my sacrificed future. My phone started ringing, Mom's number flashing on the screen. I turned it off and kept driving. When I got home, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out that old acceptance letter. The paper had yellowed slightly, but the words still stung. We are pleased to accept you. I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning. Truman's late-night visit would set in motion events that would change everything, for both of us. Sunday family dinners were always a battlefield, but this one promised to be nuclear. I could feel it as soon as I walked through my parents' front door and saw Truman sitting at the dining table, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 3 days. "Emma!" Mom rushed to hug me. "Thank goodness you're here. Your brother's been telling us everything." "Has he?" I met Truman's bloodshot eyes. "Everything?" Dad emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Why didn't you help him when he came to you?" "No, hello." "No, how are you?" Straight to the accusations. "Because I'm not his personal bailout fund anymore," I said, hanging up my coat. "He's family," Mom hissed, as if I'd forgotten. "He needs us." Funny how that only applies when he needs something. I sat down across from Truman. "Have you told them about the gambling debts, or just the Tiffany drama?" The room went silent. Truman's face drained of color. "Gambling debts?" Dad's voice was dangerous and low. That's not important right now," Truman stammered. "Oh, I think it is." I pulled out my phone and opened a series of screenshots. "My friend works at the Grand Casino. Guess who's been spending thousands there every weekend?" Mom snatched the phone from my hands, her face growing paler with each swipe. "Truman, tell me this isn't true." "I was trying to win back what Tiffany took." He slammed his fist on the table, making the silverware jump. "I had a system." "A system?" I laughed. "Like your system for that failed food truck business? Or the cryptocurrency scheme?" "Emma, that's enough," Dad warned. "No, it's not enough." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You want to know why I didn't help him? Because every time we bail him out, he gets worse. He needs to face consequences for once in his life." "I'm right here," Truman growled. "Yeah, you are. Living in Mom and Dad's guest room, I assume. Still expecting everyone else to clean up your mess?" Mom started crying. Right on schedule. "Please," she sobbed. "We need to help him. Emma, you have savings." "No." I cut her off. "I already gave him my savings, remember? For the wedding that lasted less than a year?" "That was different," Dad argued. "How? How was it different?" My voice rose. "Because it was for something you approved of? Because precious Truman needed it?" "You're being cruel," Mom whispered. "I'm being realistic." I turned to Truman. "You want help? Here's help. Get a job. Pay your own debts. Grow up." Truman stood up, towering over me. "You think you're so perfect? At least I tried to do something with my life. What are you doing? Teaching at some second-rate college?" "I'm doing what I can with what's left after you took my future," I shouted back. "Nobody took anything from you," Dad interrupted. "You chose to help your brother." "Chose?" I spun to face him. "Like I had a choice. You and Mom manipulated me into it, just like you always do." The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Mom wiped her eyes and went to answer it. "Emma?" Audrey's voice called from the entryway. "Ready to go?" I'd asked her to call with an emergency after an hour, knowing I'd need an escape route. "Yeah, coming." I grabbed my coat. "We're done here." "Emma, please," Truman called after me. "I'll do better, I promise." I paused at the door. "Promises don't mean anything from you anymore. But here's one from me. This is the last time I watch you destroy yourself. You want to change? Prove it." "How?" His voice was small, almost like when we were kids. I pulled a folded paper from my pocket and tossed it on the table. "That's a job application. Entry-level position at my college. Maintenance work, minimum wage. Not glamorous enough for you, probably." "You can't be serious," Mom protested. "Dead serious. Take the job or don't. But that's the only help you're getting from me." I walked out, Audrey close behind. As we got into her car, I could see my family through the dining room window. Mom crying, Dad comforting her. Truman staring at the job application like it was written in alien language. "You okay?" Audrey asked as we pulled away. "No," I admitted, "but I will be." My phone started buzzing with texts from Mom. "How could you be so heartless?" "He's your brother." "Family helps family." I turned off my phone and leaned back in the seat, exhausted but somehow lighter. For the first time in my life, I'd stood my ground. It felt terrifying and liberating all at once. What I didn't know then was that my ultimatum would have consequences none of us could have predicted. 3 days after the family dinner explosion, I was reviewing blueprints in my office when Jarvis knocked on my door, looking concerned. "Your brother's here," he said. "He's filling out paperwork in HR." I nearly dropped my coffee. "He actually showed up? Wearing a tie and everything." Jarvis leaned against my doorframe. "You sure about this? Having him work here?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Audrey. "Emergency, lunch, now. You need to see this." 20 minutes later, I sat across from Audrey at our usual cafe while she pulled up something on her laptop. "Remember how I said something felt off about Truman's story?" She turned the screen toward me. "My friend at the bank did some digging. Look at these transactions." I scanned the document, my stomach dropping. "These aren't just gambling debts." "Nope." Audrey pointed to several large transfers. "He was moving money around between accounts, taking loans from some pretty sketchy people. Classic pyramid scheme stuff." "How much are we talking about?" She named a figure that made me feel dizzy. "That's..." I couldn't even finish the sentence. "More than just casino losses?" "Yeah." Audrey closed her laptop. "He's in deep, Em, like dangerous deep." The bell above the cafe door chimed, and I looked up to see Truman walking in, still wearing his new tie. He spotted us and headed over. "Hey," he said, hovering awkwardly by our table. "I got the job, starting tomorrow in maintenance." "Congratulations," I said flatly. "Who'd you borrow money from, Truman?" He froze. "What? The loans, the transfers. The real reason Tiffany left, maybe?" His face went pale. "How did you—" "Doesn't matter. What matters is you're not just gambling away your money anymore. You're in trouble with loan sharks, aren't you?" Audrey stood up. "I'll give you 2 a minute." After she left, Truman collapsed into her empty chair. "I can explain." "Please do. Explain how you got involved with people who break kneecaps for fun." "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he whispered. "I borrowed a little to cover some debts, then a little more to pay those debts. Then Tiffany found out and took everything before the sharks could get it," I finished. "Smart girl." "They're giving me 3 months," he said, staring at his hands. "I thought if I could just win big once." "That's your solution? More gambling?" "I don't know what else to do." His voice cracked. "Mom and Dad's house is mortgaged to the hilt. You won't help. I'm running out of options." I took a long sip of my coffee, thinking about all the times I'd watched him dig himself deeper, all the times I'd thrown him a rope. "The job pays $15 an hour," I said finally. "If you work overtime and don't spend a penny on anything but food and basic necessities, you might save enough to make a dent." "That would take years. Better than broken bones." I stood up. "I have a class to teach. Don't be late tomorrow." As I walked back to campus, my phone rang. Mom again. I answered this time. "Have you seen your brother?" she demanded. "Some scary-looking men came by the house asking for him." "He's fine," I said. "He got the job." "A janitor's job? That's your idea of helping?" "It's called maintenance staff, Mom. And yes, it's helping. It's called earning your way out of trouble." "These men seemed dangerous, Emma. We need to do something." "No, he needs to do something. For once in his life." I hung up and texted Jarvis. "Keep an eye on Truman tomorrow. Don't let him near the cash office." His response came quickly. "Already on it. Security's been notified." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those transaction records, about the kind of people who would loan money to someone like Truman. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Your brother owes us. Family pays family's debts. You have 2 weeks." I blocked the number, my hands shaking. This was bigger than stolen dreams now. This was dangerous. Another text, this time from Truman. "I'm sorry for everything. I'll do better. I promise." I stared at his message for a long time before responding. Actions, not words. See you tomorrow. Setting my phone down, I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, people were looking for my brother, counting down the days until their money was due. And here I was, caught between wanting to protect him and knowing I had to let him face this on his own. Tomorrow would be his first day of real work, his first step toward either redemption or disaster. And I had front row seats to whatever came next. I was erasing architectural diagrams from the whiteboard when Professor Martinez knocked on my classroom door. My old mentor hadn't changed a bit. Same silver hair, same kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Emma, got a minute?" She was practically bouncing with excitement. "For you? Always." I set down the eraser. "What's up?" She pulled out a glossy brochure. "The International Architecture Symposium in Rome. They're looking for emerging talents to present innovative urban development concepts. I submitted your sustainable housing project." My heart stopped. "You what?" "They loved it. You're in, if you want it. All expenses paid, plus a chance to showcase your work to the top firms in Europe." The room spun slightly. Rome, architecture, everything I'd dreamed of. "When?" I managed to ask. 3 months from now. Say yes, Emma. This could change everything." Before I could respond, Jarvis burst in. "Emma, we need you. Your brother's having some kind of breakdown in the maintenance room." Of course he was. "I'll think about it," I told Professor Martinez, already heading for the door. I found Truman sitting on the floor of the supply closet, surrounded by cleaning supplies, his head in his hands. 2 weeks of actual work had taken their toll. His hands were calloused, his clothes stained with cleaning products. "They found Mom and Dad's house," he said without looking up. "Left a warning on their door." "Are they okay?" "They're staying with Aunt Sarah." He finally looked at me, his eyes red. "I can't do this, Em. This job. It's not enough. Not fast enough." "Stand up," I ordered. "What?" "Stand. Up." He did, slowly, wincing from muscle aches he wasn't used to. "You've worked here 2 weeks," I said. "That's the longest you've ever stuck with anything. You want to quit now? You don't understand. These people. No, you don't understand." I grabbed a mop and shoved it into his hands. "This isn't about the job. This is about finally growing up. You want to fix this? Keep working. Every hour, every day. Show them you're serious about paying them back. They're not exactly patient people, Emma." "Then call them," I said. "Show them your pay stubs. Set up a payment plan. Prove you're not running away this time." He gripped the mop handle until his knuckles went white. "Why are you helping me like this, after everything?" "Because watching you suffer isn't as satisfying as watching you grow up." My phone buzzed. "Professor Martinez. Need your answer by Friday. Don't let this opportunity slip away." "What's that?" Truman asked. "Nothing." I put my phone away. "Get back to work. Those floors won't clean themselves." Later that evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at the symposium brochure. Audrey paced behind me. "You have to go," she insisted. "This is everything you've wanted." "I can't leave now. Not with everything happening with Truman." "That's exactly why you should leave." She stopped pacing. "He's not your responsibility. Let him figure it out himself." My phone rang. An unknown number again. This time, I answered. "Miss Emma?" a gruff voice asked. "About your brother's debt." "I'm listening. We've seen his work records. Not much, but it's something. We might be willing to extend terms, if you guarantee the payments." I closed my eyes. "No, I'm not co-signing his debt. He needs to handle this himself." "Dangerous choice, miss." "So is threatening a man's family when he's trying to pay you back. He's working now. Let him pay." I hung up before they could respond. "Are you insane?" Audrey grabbed my phone. "You can't talk to loan sharks like that." "Actually, I can." I stood up and walked to my desk, pulling out the symposium brochure again. "Because I'm done being afraid. Done putting my life on hold." I picked up my phone and called Professor Martinez. "I'm in," I said when she answered. "I'll go to Rome." After hanging up, I texted Truman. "Meet me tomorrow before your shift. We need to talk." His response came quickly. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I typed back. "For the first time in a long time, everything's okay." I looked out my window at the darkening sky, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not just for me, but for Truman too. He was finally facing his demons, and I was finally facing mine. The fear of putting myself first, of reaching for what I wanted. Rome was waiting, and this time, nothing would stop me from going. But first, I had to tell my brother I was leaving, and hope that the progress he'd made wouldn't crumble in my absence. The campus coffee shop was nearly empty when Truman arrived for our morning meeting. He looked different after a month of real work. Thinner, stronger. His designer clothes replaced by practical wear. "You're leaving?" He stared at the symposium brochure I'd handed him. "To Italy?" "Rome, for the architecture symposium." I stirred my coffee. "I leave in 2 months." "But what about—" He gestured vaguely, meaning everything. The loan sharks, his job, our parents. "You're doing well here, Truman. The maintenance supervisor says you're one of his best workers." "That's because I'm terrified of disappointing you." He laughed, but it wasn't really a joke. "Good. Stay terrified. Keep working." I pulled out an envelope. "I've worked out a payment schedule with your creditors. They've agreed to the terms as long as you stick to it." He took the envelope with trembling hands. "How did you—" "I didn't pay them," I cut him off. "I just negotiated. The payments come from your salary. Miss one, and the deal's off." "Thank you," he whispered. "Don't thank me yet." I leaned forward. "Because here's the hard part. I won't be here to watch over you anymore." "I can handle it," he said quickly. Too quickly. "Can you? Because Mom called me crying last night, said you were talking about taking a weekend trip to Atlantic City." His face flushed. "It wasn't— I just thought—" "You thought what?" My voice rose. "That one big win would solve everything? I could pay them back faster! Or lose everything again." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. Several students turned to look. "You haven't changed at all, have you?" "That's not fair. I'm working my ass off here." "Working isn't enough if you're still thinking like a gambler." He stood too, towering over me. "You don't get to judge me. You've never made a mistake in your perfect life." "Perfect?" I laughed bitterly. "I gave up everything for you. My dreams, my savings, my future, all so you could throw it away on a failed marriage and gambling debts. I never asked for that. No, you just expected it. Like you expected Mom and Dad to always bail you out, like you expected me to fix everything." People were definitely staring now. Jarvis appeared from somewhere, moving toward us cautiously. "Everything okay here?" he asked. "Fine," I snapped. "My brother was just leaving. To go gambling, apparently." "Emma, stop," Truman pleaded. "No, you stop." I grabbed the payment schedule from his hands. "You want to gamble? Fine, but this deal is off. Handle your own mess." "Please," his voice cracked. "I was just thinking about it. I wouldn't actually—" "Save it." I crumpled the paper and threw it at him. "I'm done believing your promises." I stormed out, ignoring his calls behind me. Audrey caught up with me in the parking lot. "That was quite a show," she said. "He was going to gamble again." My hands were shaking. After everything, he was going to throw it all away. Was he, or was he just thinking about it? She touched my arm. "People don't change overnight, Em." "He's had a month." "To overcome a lifetime of bad habits?" She shook her head. "Maybe he needs more than tough love right now." My phone buzzed. A text from Truman. "I'm sorry, I won't go. Please don't tear up the payment schedule. I'll do better." Then another. "I'm scared you're leaving." And another. "I don't know how to do this without you." I sat on the curb, suddenly exhausted. Audrey sat beside me. "You know what's really scary?" I said. "Part of me wanted him to fail, to prove I was right about him." That's called being human. She bumped my shoulder. The question is, what are you going to do now? I looked at my phone again, at Truman's desperate text, at the coffee shop window, where I could see him still standing, looking lost. I'm going to Rome, I said firmly. But first, I'm going to make sure he has the tools to succeed. Or fail. His choice. I walked back into the coffee shop. Truman hadn't moved. The payment schedule stays, I said. But I'm adding conditions. Weekly counseling for gambling addiction, financial literacy classes, and you report to Jarvis while I'm gone. You're still leaving? He sounded like a little kid. Yes. Because I need to live my life, too. I straightened his maintenance uniform collar. The question is, what are you going to do with yours? He picked up the crumpled payment schedule, carefully smoothing it out. I want to be better, I really do. Then prove it. Not to me, to yourself. As I walked to my first class of the day, I realized something. For the first time, I wasn't fixing Truman's problems. I was giving him the chance to fix them himself. Whether he took that chance or not, well, that would be the real test. Your brother's here again, Jarvis said, poking his head into my office. Third time this week. I glanced at the clock. 6:30 a.m. 2 weeks before my flight to Rome. Send him in. Truman entered, carrying 2 coffee cups and a folder stuffed with papers. Dark circles under his eyes, but clear-eyed and focused. Morning, he said, handing me a coffee. I need your help with something. If it's money, it's not. He opened the folder. I've been taking those financial literacy classes. The instructor helped me make a 5-year plan. He spread the papers across my desk. Can you look it over? I scanned the documents. Detailed budgets, payment schedules, even a small savings plan. Real work, real effort. This is impressive, I admitted. I've been going to the counseling too. He sat down, fidgeting with his maintenance uniform sleeve. Did you know Dad was a gambler before we were born? I looked up sharply. What? Yeah. That's why they pushed me so hard to succeed in business. They were terrified I'd end up like him. He laughed bitterly. Guess that worked out great. Mom and Dad never said anything. They never say anything real. He took a sip of coffee. That's what my therapist says. Our family's great at avoiding hard truths. The door opened and Audrey burst in, waving a newspaper. Emma, you're in the paper, the symposium article. She stopped short. Oh, sorry, family moment? No, it's okay. Truman stood up. I should get to work anyway. Thanks for looking at the plan. Wait, I called as he reached the door. How are the payments going? He turned back, a small smile playing at his lips. 3 months clean. No gambling. No missed payments. The sharks are less sharky now. After he left, Audrey practically threw the newspaper at me. Look, they interviewed Professor Martinez about your selection. But I was still staring at the door. He's different. Who, Truman? Yeah, no kidding. She perched on my desk. Jarvis says he's been coming in early, staying late. Even helped a student jumpstart their car last week. And the gambling? Clean as a whistle, goes straight home after work, attends his meetings. She nudged me. Your tough love worked. Maybe too well. I picked up his 5-year plan. Look at this. He's actually planning for the future. Isn't that what you wanted? Yes, but... I gestured helplessly. I'm still leaving in 2 weeks. And? And what if he relapses while I'm gone? What if... Stop. Audrey grabbed my shoulders. You're not responsible for his recovery. He's doing this for himself now, not for you. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Truman showed us his financial plan. Is this your doing? No, I typed back. It's his doing. Later that day, I found Truman cleaning windows in the main hall. Students passed by, some nodding hello. He'd become a familiar face on campus. Your plan, I said, holding up the folder. It's good, really good. But nothing. I handed it back. I'm proud of you. He nearly dropped his cleaning supplies. You've never said that before. You've never deserved it before. He set down his bucket. I'm scared about you leaving. I know. But I'm also happy for you. Finally getting your dream. Part of my dream, I corrected. The symposium is just the beginning. He picked up his bucket again. I'll keep sending Jarvis weekly updates, and I'll keep going to meetings, I promise. I believe you, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. That evening, I sat in my apartment packing for Rome. Audrey helped, occasionally sneaking looks at me. Just say it, I sighed. Okay, you're worried about leaving because you think he's only doing well because of you. But you're wrong. She folded a sweater. He's doing well because he finally hit rock bottom and chose to climb up. My phone buzzed. Another text from Truman. Found this while cleaning the storage room. Attached was a photo of an old architectural sketch I'd done years ago, forgotten in a filing cabinet. Still your best critic, he added. This design would never work. The support beams are all wrong. I laughed out loud. He'd been paying attention all those times I'd talked about architecture. He's going to be okay, Audrey said softly. Yeah, I replied, looking at the photo. I think he is. For the first time, the thought of leaving didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like trust. Trust in Truman's recovery, in his growth, in his ability to stand on his own. And maybe, just maybe, that was the greatest revenge of all. Not destroying him, but helping him become strong enough to save himself. Rome was waiting. And now, finally, I could go without looking back. The applause in the Rome conference hall faded as I stepped down from the podium. My hands were still shaking from presenting my sustainable urban housing project to some of the biggest names in architecture. Brilliant presentation, Professor Martinez beamed, hugging me. And those questions you fielded about cost-effective community integration? Perfect responses. My phone buzzed with a video call from Audrey. When I answered, I saw her squished into frame with Jarvis and Truman, all crowded around a laptop in my old office. We watched the live stream, Audrey squealed. You killed it. The part about renewable materials was genius, Truman added, though your Italian still needs work. I laughed. Since when do you speak Italian? Since I started taking night classes at the community college. He adjusted his maintenance supervisor badge, a promotion he'd earned last week. Someone's got to be able to translate when you're running your own firm in Rome. Getting ahead of yourself there, little brother? Actually, Professor Martinez cut in, he might not be. Come with me. She led me through the crowd to where two elegantly dressed women waited. Emma, meet Maria and Lucia from Bertoli Architects. They'd like to discuss your project, and perhaps your future. My heart stopped. Bertoli was one of the top sustainable architecture firms in Europe. Excuse me, I told the video call. Opportunity knocking. Go get 'em, sis, Truman said before disconnecting. 20 minutes later, I stood on the conference center's balcony, staring at an official offer letter from Bertoli. A real position with real projects in Rome. My phone rang. Mom. I saw your presentation, she said when I answered. Your father and we were wrong, Emma, about everything. Mom. No, let me finish. We always pushed Truman because we thought he was fragile. But we should have pushed you too, toward your dreams, not away from them. I leaned against the balcony rail, watching the Roman sunset. Truman's doing better than ever. Because you finally stopped catching him when he fell. You made him learn to catch himself. She paused. He's teaching a financial literacy class now, did you know? At his gambling recovery meetings. He didn't tell me that. Take the job, Emma. The one I know they just offered you. Take it and don't look back. How did you? Because you're my daughter, and I finally see how brilliant you are. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry it took me so long. After we hung up, I called Truman. Did you know about Mom watching the live stream? I asked. Know about it? I set it up for her. Dad, too. They're finally seeing you, Em. The real you. The real me just got offered a job here. A long pause. You're taking it, right? I don't know. After everything, you deserve it more than ever. He took a deep breath. I paid off the last of my debts yesterday. I nearly dropped my phone. What? How? Remember that 5-year plan? I modified it, picked up extra shifts, sold my designer stuff, lived on ramen. But I did it. I'm free. Truman, that's amazing. Yeah, well, I had a good teacher. Speaking of which, I registered for architecture classes. You what? Just basics. Thought it might help me understand what my big sister's been talking about all these years. He chuckled. Plus, someone's got to keep the family business running while you're conquering Europe. I looked at the offer letter again, then at the Roman skyline stretching before me. You're really okay? This isn't just... I'm okay. Better than okay. Now stop worrying about me and sign that contract. I pulled out a pen. How do you know I haven't signed it already? Because you're you, always putting everyone else first. His voice softened. But not this time, okay? This time, put yourself first. I signed with a flourish, the ink bold against the white paper. Done. Good. I could hear his smile. Now go design something amazing. And Emma? Yeah? Thank you, not for saving me, but for showing me how to save myself. I watched a flock of birds soar past, dark shapes against the orange sky. I love you, little brother. Love you too, sis. Now go change the world. I've got some windows to clean. I hung up and walked back into the conference hall, offer letter in hand. Professor Martinez waited with the Bertolli representatives, champagne glasses ready. So? She asked. Are you ready? I thought about the long road here, the sacrifices, the pain, the growth. Thought about Truman finding his way, about Mom and Dad finally seeing me, about dreams deferred but never forgotten. Yes, I said, taking a glass. I'm ready. And I was, ready to build, to create, to soar, ready to live the life I'd always dreamed of, knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better.